Hello?
All right, we have our whole committee here, so let's go ahead and go live.
You are now live.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It is 5:02 p.m. and I am going to call the Wednesday, November 20th Quality of Life Committee meeting to order. May I please have a roll call?
Counselor Castro,
Presente.
Counselor Chavez, Counselor Garcia,
Present.
Counselor Faulkner, Madam Chair.
I am here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Moving on to approval of the agenda, are there any changes? And if not, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to approval of consent. Marcella, what was pulled?
Madam Chair, items E, H, I, and J. However, item E,
Has been unpulled
Pulled.
by myself.
yes,
Did anybody else want to hear E before we officially keep it on consent? Nope. Okay. So that would be HIJ.
yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. Anything else that the committee would like to pull at this time? And if not, can I get a motion to approve as amended?
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion to approve, and can I please get a roll call?
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner,
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
motion passes.
Wonderful. Thank you. And moving on to presentations, we do have two today. So our first is Introduction to Financial Empowerment Centers. We have Rose Harvey, who's a manager for Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund, and then our very own Florence Frank, who is our Bloomberg Harvard City Hall Fellow within the Community Development Department. So I will hand it on over to you. Come on over.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Quick tech question. I know I submitted them in PrimeGov. Do we have those loaded or is this all good?
We should be able to pull them up on the screen. And I am not the person to ask that question to.
IT, can you please turn on the screens?
And then Marcella, you said that, so we have our new system, Civic Clerk, that will be able to upload things into Civic Clerk after the meeting. So we'll be able to upload these slides so the community can access them at that point. Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. Thank you. Is the mic on?
But now? No?
There we go. Do you just
There you
have to really
Or
talk into
really
it?
talk it? Wonderful. So just some quick words of introduction, and then I will turn it over to our staff. Thank you again for all the tech help so far, just getting this up on the screen. My name is Florence Frank. I'm primarily based in the Affordable Housing Department. I do some work across the community development and economic development. So particularly for this initiative, this is an interesting one. This was a joint initiative. The idea is to establish financial empowerment centers. This would be program where financial counseling can be done as a public service. So this was purposely initiated. Again, we are in a very much a planning stage. We are exploring the program design. So we've got staff here from the CFE Fund who can chat more about the program and how this has worked nationally. And then we'll have an opportunity for questions afterwards.
Great, thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Rose Harvey. I'm a manager at Cities for Financial Empowerment Fund, and I am very excited to be here in the city of Santa Fe today and tomorrow with my colleague, working with the city to explore what it would mean to launch a municipally led financial counseling program in the city. Next slide. First, I want to thank our supportive partners, Bloomberg Philanthropies, Wells Fargo, and Principal. Next slide. A little bit about the CFE Fund. We are a national philanthropic organization based in New York City, and we are dedicated to supporting city and county governments around the country by providing grant funding and technical assistance to support them in launching financial stability initiatives. We work in these 4 core areas: asset building, banking access, consumer protection, and financial counseling. You might know us through our national Bank On work. We are currently working with the state of New Mexico to launch a Bank On coalition, helping residents connect to safe and affordable banking access. Next slide. And just to date, showing that we have worked with over, I think these are a little outdated to now, over 150 cities and counties across the country, helping provide nearly $70 million in grant funds. Slide. So we are here today, you can go forward, I think 2 slides. To talk about financial empowerment centers. This is a municipal-led one-on-one professional financial counseling program. I will go into the details of what this looks like, the opportunities, how the city can support on helping its residents be stronger with its banking, credit, debt, and savings. I want to share first, though, this is not a new initiative. The first financial empowerment center was launched nearly 15 years ago in New York City to great success. It was replicated across the whole 5 boroughs. Since 2013, the CFE Fund has been involved in helping to replicate this model all across the country. We did a 5-city pilot and a 3-year evaluation to see if what worked in New York City all those years ago could work in other municipalities with different contexts and geographies and populations, and found a lot of success. And so since then, have been offering our services to help more cities and counties offer financial counseling. Slide. You can see on this map, we can see the dots, not quite the city names. We have over 30 open and operating financial empowerment centers around the country, with over 20 more, and it's growing, cities and counties like yourself looking to launch this program. And I really want to point out that, I know you can't see the names, but this is a program that, though it's a national financial counseling program model, is very localized to your community. So we have cities all over the country that, are bigger: Nashville, Denver, San Antonio, New York, also smaller, who have around the same population Santa Fe has: Aurora, Illinois, Lansing, Michigan, Pueblo, Colorado, Jackson, Tennessee, Shreveport, Louisiana. We have our West Coast cities, our Southern cities, our Midwest cities. It's really intentional as part of our year-long planning process to make sure that this program model fits your community, your needs, your residents, your program partners. And just to share, to date, we're very excited that our 30+ financial empowerment centers have served over 180,000 residents, helping to reduce nearly $300 million in debt and build nearly $60 million in savings. A little bit about what this national program model looks like. Again, CFE Fund has spent 10+ years iterating, investing in this to make it a very robust, effective, professionalized service. First, financial empowerment centers offer no-cost financial counseling. There are no costs for services at any point to come in and see a counselor as many times as you like, to get your credit report pulled, and anyone is able to come in who's over the age of 18. There are no income restrictions, no program restrictions, no eligibility, no documentation or immigration restrictions. Anyone in the city is able to come in as a publicly led service. Financial counseling is individualized. We know that there is an existing foundation of financial literacy resources, financial education workshops, which are critical in the community. This program takes that work and goes one step beyond to offer one-on-one individualized counseling, where one client meets with one counselor going over their specific background, their actual credit report, the amount of debt they have, their income, their employment status, housing status, et cetera, their goals, how they feel about money, helping to work with the client over the course of numerous sessions until we see an actual improvement in their debt reduced, their savings increased, bank accounts opened, or credit score increased. It's a professionalized service, so there are no volunteers for financial counseling in the FEC model. Typically, the city works with either a city office or more commonly a nonprofit to actually hire full-time program manager and counselors to be full-time professionally trained counselors who are deeply aware of financial content, counseling trends, local partners to make referrals out to, and how to guide people through very vulnerable times in their life around their financial challenges. Financial counseling is very integrated. This is what is most exciting about it being a city-led service, is that what we're not trying to launch a new financial counseling program that will be managed and operated off to the side. This is meant to intentionally support all of your existing social services. It's meant to be embedded into the ongoing programs you have. We've heard a lot about Connect, for example, and wanting to add a financial counseling piece to the ongoing services that the other referrals that clients are receiving. It's also meant to be geographically available throughout the community. So it's not just one physical brick and mortar location, but services are offered virtually. They're offered in site, maybe at a library once a week, a community center, a grocery store, wherever clients are already going to make it more geographically accessible for them. We are very data-driven on the FEC program model. I'll go over some screenshots that show how our database collects over 200 data points. Again, really driving home it's an individualized service. In order to provide accurate professional guidance to a client to decrease their debt or get out of a really sticky credit situation, you need to really understand a lot about their background and their whole financial profile. It's also an invaluable tool for city government as a city service to be very transparent and accountable in who you're serving, how many clients, how many sessions, and the outcomes of the program. And then lastly, it is a sustainable government-led program. This is what really sets it apart from other programs that may exist in the nonprofit space. There is more than enough need to go around for more programs like this. This is meant to be the city-led program. Actually, go to the next slide, where the city is the one who is really prioritizing where to target financial counseling, certain demographics, certain financial needs, certain locations, any target area you'd like to focus on. And I really want to emphasize this role of government in doing this work. This is at the core of CFE Fund's mission, but particularly at the FEC model, which is that government is an excellent convener. There is already so much going on we've heard about today in our various stakeholder meetings of different social services and partners dedicated towards increasing the financial stability of your residents. Government can play a really good, impactful role of bringing everyone to the table to go towards a shared mission, working together, filling in the gaps. We also know that there are a plethora of financial services out there that are a little shady. There may be a scam. And so it's a very legitimate way to have a city-led service to know that residents can trust it and that it'll be high quality and professional. Just really quickly, when we're talking about financial counseling, to be really clear, we are primarily talking about these four main building blocks: safe and affordable banking access, which is an absolute foundation to other financial health, establishing credit and increasing credit score, decreasing debt and liquid accounts, and building savings. I really want to emphasize the empowerment piece of this, which is the client can come into financial counseling services, state what challenges they have, what goals they have, and the professional will help navigate them throughout their journey, but it's really client-centered. There isn't a specific curriculum that someone completes or checks the boxes for. It's whatever that client wants to discuss and whatever is going on in their financial life. We can go to the next slide. A little bit about the demographics. So I shared our national numbers to date, which are very, very impressive. But I also want to be really clear about who we're talking about when we talk about who serves financial counseling. So even though it is a public service available to everyone over the age of 18, it is primarily focused towards low to moderate income residents who need the most support with their limited resources. This looks different in every city, but nationally, we see that clients are largely women. They have a lower income, majority have children, majority are working. But not on the slide is also the fact that most FEC clients are unbanked, underbanked, high housing costs. Despite these perceived challenges, what we can see at the bottom is that clients are still succeeding because of the individualized professionalized service. Your average client who sees an increase in their savings sees $3,400 increase median in their savings. They're seeing over $5,000 reduce their credit score go up by a very meaningful percentage of at least 33 points, and actually reducing their delinquent accounts. So even though it is a service targeted to people who maybe have more challenges and a lack of resources, because of this individualized, professional, high-quality city service, we are seeing success. Going back to the point about financial counseling being very integrated in the community, we have spent all day today talking to different stakeholders about where would they want to see financial counseling most focused as a city service. This is one of the localized aspects of this national program model, is that you all can determine who has the most need, where do you want to direct most of your resources. And there are a number of options of where you might connect your financial counseling services to program partners who are already serving clients who may be more interested in receiving financial counseling services. It really can span the gamut between any city or county service, housing services, library, workforce, corrections, veterans, legal services, anywhere that you see people having any sort of financial challenge, which if you look closely enough can be quite common, unfortunately, you can add a tight integration to helping those clients also receive financial counseling services. Just 3 quick examples, just to go into detail. We see a lot of financial counseling partnerships with small business programs, entrepreneurship programs. We know that small business owners can really struggle with separating their personal finance from their small business finances, don't always understand the implication of using their personal savings or credit score for their business, and need help understanding the difference between why they should have a business checking account and kind of differ those financial profiles. So it's quite common for people who go through entrepreneurship or small business startup programs to have financial counseling be added as a formal step, to have them also go through financial counseling to really understand how to start their business in a financially healthy way. We see a number of housing partnerships. I know housing is a big priority in the city of Santa Fe right now. It's quite common for housing counseling programs, home ownership programs, down payment assistance programs to connect the people who are applying, who maybe don't get into those programs or who do go in those programs, to a financial counselor so they can shore up, their savings, their credit, and be prepared for what the financial costs are of being a homeowner to make them more successful to go through that home ownership program. And then lastly, utilities. Referrals for financial counseling should not be limited to nonprofit partners. Again, there's a wide variety of creative ideas out there. Really commonly, we see utility companies, we heard a lot about water today, wanting to refer clients to the FEC. They don't want to shut off services and they want to receive their money. And so it's a really good pipeline to have the utility company share who is delinquent or is at risk of being delinquent with financial counseling, so those residents can get ahead of some budgeting and saving to keep their utilities. A little bit about programs. So it's a no-cost service. CFE Fund, we are very happy to provide up to $150,000 in grant funds to start the program, but as a city-led program, it does need to be funded and sustained by the city, and that can be through a number of different funding options, through public funding, such as general funds, federal funds, ARPA is coming to an end, CDBG is quite common, TANF funding, city department offices, as well as private funding. Banks are very common funders of the FEC. They can use this for CRA credit, and they love the data-driven aspect of financial counseling. This is different in every context. I've been working with Florence bi-weekly on all of this FEC planning, but part of this is thinking about the funding options to have a sustainable public-private funding mix to keep this program going. Just a quick screenshot of one of our dashboards. So like I mentioned, the CFE Fund, as the national convener of the FEC program, we're happy to provide all of our national FEC partners, the city partners, as well as the nonprofit counselors and managers with access to a no-cost Salesforce platform that, again, shows over 200 data points per client. A very, very powerful tool for government, again, to be transparent, accountable, seeing in live time who you're serving, are you meeting who you want to meet, and what the outcomes of your program are. Slide. So wrapping us up, so we have provided the city of Santa Fe a $20,000 planning grant to be in this year-long exploratory process to understand, is an FEC viable in the community? And if so, what are the operations to make it a reality at some point in the next few years? I personally am the technical assistance lead for the city of Santa Fe on this initiative. I meet bi-weekly with Florence, and we are talking through these tangible steps for the city to take to submit a successful proposal for funding to launch an FEC, including identifying a government office to place a part-time staff member to oversee the FEC, a nonprofit financial counseling provider to actually hire counselors, deliver services, identifying a starting group of program partners that will change and be added and edited over time, developing a counselor training plan, a marketing plan. So having a very, very robust plan in place so that when you do launch financial counseling services, it's immediately impactful, effective, and serving the residents you want to see, as well as securing fundraising for year one. Next slide. Perfect. So again, I'm very excited to be here. We're at the beginning of this planning phase with Florence and Joanna to really explore how this could benefit the community. And we've been here for a little while meeting with stakeholders, but really excited to share out this potential opportunity with you all, and happy to hear any questions or comments you have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. And before I hand the floor over to the committee, Johanna or Florence, do either of you have anything to add at this time?
This has been the first meeting where I haven't interrupted constantly with little anecdotes of how this could be fun. So I'm going to try to similar opportunity to see the floor and try to answer.
Wonderful. All right, moving over to the committee. Councilor Faulkner, then Councilor Garcia.
So one of the areas that I see this might be beneficial is in my district, we have a lot of young people, and they come from at-risk situations and a lot of trauma. And I know that when we did a survey to see what they wanted at the teen center, they didn't ask for sports, they didn't ask for entertainment, they asked for life skills. And one of the major life skills they asked for is, how do I balance a checkbook? How do I get a job? How do they handle their financial life? Because in a lot of cases, their parents can't do that. And we have children who are doing that for their families, and they want to they want to break generational trauma. And so I would be interested in this, especially in my district, to help the young people in my district to figure out how to become functioning adults in this area.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I guess my question is for Ms. Frank. It's going to have several parts to it, and then I'll let you respond. So how long have we been undergoing the pilot process or the exploratory process where we got a 20K allocation to explore this opportunity? And what have we learned? Is it for us? Is it not for us, et cetera? I mean, just more so where are we at with this process?
Wonderful question. So the academy process, the planning process, was in two distinct parts. The first one was exactly to most of your question was, is this even for us? So those were some very preliminary meetings with some government offices. For me, it was most important knowing this community to speak with Connect first to get a sense was, is this going to be duplicative? Because that's not going to work here. It's such a wonderful program. Anyone watching online, if you don't know about Connect, I'm always happy to answer questions about it. I love to cheerlead this program. So that was one, was to see, are there gaps? So that was in June that we started that process. And then by August, we've really shifted over to the second one, was thinking more concretely of, we'll be here for a year. Again, we're not launching next week, and we might still find in this year, this is just not going to work. This is not going to be the city for us. So this has been more of the ramp up, and this is the biggest kickoff moment that it's not just me speaking about this program. So to the other half of your question, and again, please ask more clarifying details. Biggest one has been within the social services side, is that a lot of organizations are saying, yes, this is exactly what we need. We're able to do some of the really quick fixes right now, but in terms of longer term planning, in terms of integrating this with job searching, that's been a huge need. I always have to emphasize, especially coming from me, because I'm more situated on the housing side, I always say, you know, we can't do this without housing being a component. But I think that's going to be the next phase as we go forward, is finding out what are the niches that aren't just helping within housing. But one thing I want to emphasize within housing, it really is across the housing spectrum. There's a lot of options, potential areas of opportunity for eviction prevention, being really creative there. I think the most obvious one, knowing Santa Fe, is thinking of workforce housing and home ownership and prospective home ownership, and just changing the narrative of, is this possible for me, and getting to the concrete skills. So that's a lot of rambling. I just want to mention that within the social services, that's been one area we've learned. I think some of the outstanding questions have been, well, don't we have a lot of financial providers in the community? How is this different? So a lot of that is going to be continued engagement. I'm so happy about this opportunity, but also happy we're not starting next week. We still have a lot more to learn, and particularly within that, of how we can be complementary and making sure we're not steering people towards certain types of outcomes, and making sure it's really client driven.
Appreciate that update. That did get into one of my next questions, which is, are we competing for services for other entities? And it sounds like we're still in that exploratory phase. We're on the beginning end of this planning process. As we wrap up this planning phase, is there going to be kind of a final report given to the governing body saying, we took a year to evaluate this, we believe this is a good fit for the city, or this is not a good fit for the city, and this is why? Is that the next steps for us?
I'm going to answer quickly and then let you jump in. Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the great things about this program is the fact that it is so city driven and it is so much of a planning. We can go there. We can even do more frequent updates. I'm not promising once a month. You guys have a lot of things on your agenda, but we're happy to do more updates throughout the process, especially if there are any key highlights. And I'm going to turn it over to Rose in terms of some of the key deliverables, but it's not like we're at a point of this is a strict RFP and it has to be closed right this minute.
Yeah, and to clarify, we don't have any formal deliverable that comes out of this planning process, except the very strong hope that you all do decide to submit a proposal for grant funds to launch a financial empowerment center. So there's no like written report or presentation. Either the city will, hopefully decide that it is worth the investment to support the existing social services and you will move forward, or you might decide to pause and wait for a better opportune moment, or that it's not for you at this time.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thank you for the information on this program. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
No other
Council.
questions, Madam Chair?
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from members of the committee? I just have a couple. Do want to thank you, everyone for being here and for this work and for really exploring this. In terms, I'm glad you brought up Connect, because that was my immediate thought, is that this does seem to really fit very well with the Connect program, the Connect model, how we try to look at the various social needs that individuals may have. And of course, financial security often is at the crux of it all. Is the county at all involved in the collaboration? Because that really has been one of the areas that the city and the county has beautifully collaborated, is the Connect program. So are they involved with this process as well?
Yes, that's the quick answer, is yes. In terms of the planning process, we are the ones as in the city who initiated this planning process. But as we're going through this and defining the boundaries and whatnot, we're going to be speaking with a couple members of their staff tomorrow, in fact. And the way I see it, in the same way that we're learning about ways this can integrate in the city here, the various departments, I wouldn't be surprised if they feel the same way. But yeah, there's definitely no order to say, because the city of Santa Fe initiated this process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll just add, there are a lot of very successful models of a city owning a financial empowerment center, but working very closely with the county, either through county providing some funding for a counselor to then offer financial counseling service throughout the whole county, to the county making tight integrations or referrals with their own county-led services, to being a thought partner, to helping to provide some physical co-location space somewhere. So we're definitely going to explore how the county can support in any of those different mechanisms in this planning process.
Wonderful. And glad to hear funding, because I know that's been one of the ways that the Connect has been so successful, is having both the city and the county really financially invested there. And then continuing to think that, of course, the model is really wonderful. It always comes down to, how do we fund this? Have there been either, I'm not sure you're at this point yet, but conversations with representatives from the state or exploring what are some of the opportunities with the state? I know that they, I had a meeting with what was the Mortgage Finance Authority, now is Housing New Mexico, and they were discussing all of these really incredible programs that are based in housing financing for cities, for individuals. So I'm curious if that exploration has already happened in terms of state partnership.
Well, in terms of that question, I would say definitely it's on the earlier stages, but definitely the door's not closed. I think the best example I can give right now is I've had several opportunities just coincidentally in the last couple of weeks with the state treasurer's office and the way they talk about some of their financial programs. One that they mentioned by name is the Bank On program, which is another one CFE fund staff can chat about. They're very, very aware of that program. That was one thing that occurred to me after I sat down is so City of Albuquerque does not have this program. However, they've done a lot of very similar programs with the CFE fund. They've explored this in other ways. So there's, besides the county, there's other regional spillover. So I would say as of now that the state treasurer is the main one I know that we might have a certain opportunity, at least just to talk about this. But the more we can hear from counselors and other constituents and anyone else about other connections, the state, they're definitely.
Wonderful. Thank you. Did you have anything to add? No, okay. You looked a little bit like you might be heading towards the mic. So, well, I have no other further questions at this time. I do really want to thank you all so much for being here. Please do let me know when there are any presentation worthy updates. And I'd be happy to bring you all back to quality of life. You all were very, took the initiative on making sure that you got here, and I really appreciate it because otherwise we would not have known about it. So thank you, and do let me know when it is time to bring you back, and we'll get you on the agenda. Very excited for this work. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next presentation, we have Santa Fe's AI approach, roadmaps and opportunities to use AI in city government. We have Eric Candelaria, our Director of Information Technology and Telecommunications, and Henry Hammond Paul, our Director of Community Health and Safety, here to present. And again, I do believe that we all received these slides in our email. And then after the meeting, we will make sure to have these uploaded into, we're still using both. So both Civic Clerk and PrimeGov things will be uploaded into. And I will pass it on to you.
Here we go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you, Madam Chair, councilors, committee members. Happy to be here. We're excited to share what we feel is our roadmap and approach to help initiate AI into the city of Santa Fe. Again, I'm Eric Candelaria. I'm the Director of IT here. In the audience, we've got John Lucero, who is our Chief Information Security Officer, who is joining us for some extra questions as well. And I couldn't go any further without thanking Director Hammond Paul from Community Services for his support and guidance in creating this PowerPoint. So today what we would like to talk about is really give a brief overview and description of what AI is, what generative AI is, the potential use cases for AI, potential risks, as well as the best practices and our city's approach as we move forward. We really want to make it understand that AI in certain capacities could be used as a real tool in the toolkit of information technology as we move forward. So let's quickly, briefly talk about what AI is. AI, which is artificial intelligence, works as a simulating of human intelligence through the use of algorithms, data, and computational power. The goal is to enable machines and software to perform tasks that typically require human intelligence, such as learning, reasoning, problem solving, perception, and language understanding. If you 80 movie buffs can recall the company that was called Skynet. Skynet is the company that created the Terminator. So we'll talk a little bit about what Gen AI is. So generative AI, which is in terms of Gen AI, is a typical of artificial intelligence that can create new content. It includes writing text, generating images, and even creating videos. We can think of AI as kind of like a toolbox, but then you can also think about Gen AI as a toolkit in that toolbox. So Gen AI can draft reports, it can create images for presentations, summarize lengthy documents, do meeting minutes if we need to. It's trained on vast amounts of data sources, the learning patterns and the structures that generate outputs based on the generated prompts. We look at some of them that are out there now, such as, by Meta, they have their version of AI. The most probably popular is ChatGPT. These are all widely available and can be used in many forms. So part of our goal as we talk about this is to provide the efficiency and recognize the potential to revolutionize how we work. It can significantly improve our efficiency in policymaking and service delivery, allow us to serve the public more effectively. And now we'll talk about a few of the cases that probably are more prevalent to use. We can talk about how they can assist in most of our daily tasks as we move forward. A couple of use cases we're going to talk about. Three in specific are drafting communications, content summary, and data analysis and visualization. Probably the most practical use for Gen AI is daily work. So it can help us draft communications, whether it's writing emails, letters, or memos. Gen AI can help create the first draft quickly and efficiently. This not only saves time, but also ensures that content is clear and well structured. One of the second cases that we would look at is an application for content summarization. So for example, you take and summarize lengthy, documents, meeting notes, things that take a lot of time for us to kind of sort through and kind of, absorb that information. AI can kind of really take that information and summarize it in quick formats. This allows for quick information so we can retrieve and we can create better decisions based off those processes. The third Gen AI use case is to Excel data analysis and visualization. They can quickly analyze large data sets, identify trends, and generate comprehensive reports quickly through documentation, be provided through dashboards and whatnot, to be demonstrating more transparency. This is particularly useful in analyzing public feedback and preparing for presentations. The other piece that we're looking at is when we use responsible Gen AI, we could help create our city government to what we call care more. They can be more conversational, more accessible, more responsive, and more evidence-based in its processes and presentations towards our constituents. Now we want to talk about probably what a lot of people think about when they think about AI, or at least in my world, which is the risks. We're going to talk about data privacy, hallucinations, and bias. Part of the data processes or privacy, excuse me, is when we're using these tools, it's crucial to be aware that this information is safe to input. So we got to try to avoid inputting sensitive and personal identification data. into these tools, we should always review the terms and conditions of the platforms that we're using, so we understand where the data will be used and stored. Part of the problem that we see a lot of the free versions of tools, when we input, data into that little search bar, then that data then is uploaded into, that little cloud that's above us. And that data is available for anybody else who uses that free version of tooling. The paid versions allow us to opt out of some of the attributes to that. So it will allow us to search the data sets that are already in the cloud, but it will also pull that data back down that we provide. So there's a lot of things that we need to look at as we try to look at the tools that we want to implement for people to use. The second risk, of course, is called hallucination. And this is a significant risk where AI generates incorrect or completely made up information. And this can happen because GenAI predicts the next word or phrase based on the training that is put into the data models, which can sometimes lead to inaccuracies. So identifying some of those hallucinations and mitigating those risks is to always cross-check, be skeptical of the data that is produced, and then always understand with human interaction to review the data that is fed back to you. You'll hear that term over and over, human interaction, human checking, because while these are very valid tools to use, we still have to understand that they still need a human element to review and for the checks and balances. And then there's also bias. So since it's trained on vast amounts of data from various sources, it can inadvertently reflect a bias presence in that data. That can lead to outputs that perpetuate particular stereotypes or discriminatory scenarios. One of the, I guess, the biggest parts about AI is we have our risks and we have ways that we can use these free tools, but we also have to understand as users the best practices as we use these tools. So by using them, we have to continuously update the knowledge on the latest developments and the best practices of using these tools. This not only boasts productivity, but also ensures that we're equipped with the latest strategies for mitigating bias and hallucination. We need to understand the organization's data security policies so that we can understand how to safely experiment with the internal data and comply with other procedures that are generated by data privacy. When you can, and you task AI with projects, you try to do it within the area of your own expertise so you can do the checks and balances and see that it's outputting the right data. Then you can leverage it to do some other things that you needed to do. And you'd be more confident that the data sets or the items that are coming back are more accurate than if you just started, just entering data in there. And then we should also use it to use GenAI just to support decisions and not to actually make the decisions for us. So it's not a replacement for human judgment. You should never have AI write letters to a website's content or without oversight, just so that we understand what AI is generating and when we put it on our boards. And then lastly, we're going to talk about a little bit of our the AI approach that the city is currently doing. So right now, what we're doing is we're developing our AI policy. And that we're doing is we're actually, there we go, following the industry standards for the frameworks to ensure that the policy is robust and adaptable, and to ensure that it aligns with the city's values and strategic goals. We are going to collaborate with department leaders so that way we can understand what those use cases could be, how they want to use, or some of their areas of concern or areas where we could help improve those services. And then we want to define those Gen AI use cases. By doing that, we can conduct workshops, brainstorming sessions with departments to identify specific use cases. And off of those workshops and interviews, we can stack ranking those use cases, develop a ranking system to evaluate the use cases, consider factors such as technical feasibility, opportunity, and alignment with city goals. We're also going to talk about championing the initiative. So that's present the AI strategy and its benefits to key stakeholders, addressing any concerns and highlights and potential positive impact to the city operations. And all that is really, getting support from our legal, our city council, and city leaders. And then lastly, of course, is educate our city staff. Implementing training programs and workshops to educate staff on AI tools, risks, and critical considerations will help our enablement for AI as we move forward. So looking ahead, we want to take away some key takeaways. So it's understanding AI and generative AI. So those help us gain insights on basic concepts to advance applications, ensuring solid foundations in AI technologies. Look at use cases to discover innovative ways that generative AI can enhance our city services and foster community engagement, driving efficiency and connectivity. Understand the risk and mitigation, stay informed about the potential challenges, and learn strategies to address them, ensuring safe and responsible AI adoption. And then, of course, following best practices that follow guidelines for ethical and effective AI implementation, promoting transparency and trust. And then lastly is talking about the Santa Fe vision, which is the commitment to leverage AI for a smarter, more inclusive future, enhancing the quality of life for all its residents. That, if there's any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate you being here and stepping in and taking this. We were supposed to have an outside presenter as well, and they canceled on us again. So really quite grateful for both of you to be here and take this on. Turning it over to committee, any questions or comments? Councilor Castro.
Thank you so much. And I think it's more of a comment. This is such a huge project and it's touching so many things that it's hard to have specific questions. But I have some ideas around our emergency services and how we could use AI to help us be prepared for that big fire, that big flood, that next big thing. So I would love to speak to both of you, I guess, offline about what we can do to support that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? The only other area that kept coming up for me was our constituent services and our CRM, and we frequently hear this feedback. We get a lot of requests come in, a lot of work orders coming in, but also that there's not as much communication with constituents about what they can expect, and that is an area that is kind of popping in my brain as we think about how we can have increased dialogue with the community and how that can assist us with getting these work orders through, because our constituent services staff is always buried in them. So have you guys had any of those conversations, looking at that dashboard or any of those pieces?
So Madam Chair, committee members, yes, that's a great question, because there's a lot of pieces that go into that, which is, implementing chatbots to help ease the constituents as they enter information, as they ask for requests. And a lot of time they will get quick feedback. So AI can help do that. Also AI can help categorize all those requests that come in, and maybe even route them through workflow to the right department. So yeah, those are a lot of, meeting, note-taking AI pieces, things that support generative or that can support constituent services. Those are all use cases that we're looking at to see where they fit, how feasible they are to actually migrate in. And of course, now that everybody knows we're talking about it, I have a lot of new best friends who want to be the pilots for a lot of these. And that's okay. But, we still have to look at them holistically and see which ones give us the right outputs that we need for not only the city employees, but also the constituents of Santa Fe.
Wonderful, thank you. And of course, my knowledge of this is extremely shallow. So the other area that I imagine to be really complicated, but I am curious if it could be of assistance, is IPRA requests. As the city attorney had mentioned, the number of IPRA requests the city of Santa Fe is receiving has grown, and we are quickly catching up to Albuquerque with not as many resources in terms of staff as Albuquerque has, and a much smaller population. I know that there's a lot of legal complications there, of course, and I am curious if that is another area where there is potential here for how we might both assist with the constituents' experience with IPRA, public records requests. Sorry for any community members that are listening and aren't used to our alphabet soup, as well as, again, assisting our staff with dealing with such a high volume coming in that does have such, specific requirements that come down from state statute.
Madam Chair, committee members, again, another great question, because that one specifically has to deal more with our internal data, where our internal data is, we need it to be as classified as possible, so we're searching the right things for the right reasons. And that's a task that is probably going to be maybe the second or third phase of our implementation of AI. Because of our data classification, we have to go through and all our data, classify it so we understand what we have and where we need to store it. So that is more possible to do for the constituent side if they go to the website to easily find the data that is there. But on the back end for our IPRA people to actually input that data, it has to be classified. We have to go through a whole data convergence, data classification thing. So it's more intense.
Interesting. Director Hammond-Paul?
I just want to help clarify, classified data is not the security threshold. It's about how data is labeled and structured for folks listening. So the city won't be classifying our data.
Yes, good point.
CIA.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving us the terminology. Appreciate that. So, well, thank you again. Definitely looking forward, as we continue to move forward with this project. Again, please do let us know when there are updates that will be of note for the Quality of Life Committee, and really appreciate your work on this. And so thank you all for being here. So moving on, I just realized that we made a mistake as we were discussing the consent agenda. Item E was not the one that we were no longer pulling, but we did already pass it. So I will follow up with you, Johanna. It was item, it was item Regina. It was H that we were, nope, not H, definitely not H. It was item I that we were no longer pulling. So I apologize. That was a mistake on our end. So we can let the staff go unless I think you guys may be here for other reasons anyway. But I would just propose that we change the agenda unless somebody else still wanted I. Did anybody else still want I at this time? I know you all got an opportunity to discuss it at Public Works Utilities. Okay. So if I could get a motion to change the agenda to immediately move to item I so we can just pass that one quickly and move it out of the way, that would be great.
Second.
Motion and a second to jump to item I. Can I please have a roll call?
Counselor Castro? Counselor Chavez?
Yes.
Counselor Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Wonderful. And now if I could get a motion to approve item I?
Move to approve.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Counselor Castro?
Yes.
Counselor Chavez? Counselor Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner? Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. And I apologize for that mix-up. I had spoken to you in the hall, so I just assumed that we had gotten the letters correctly, but we did not. And Director Nelson, I will follow up with you later at another time, given that we already passed it. So let's go ahead and move along to item H. This is a bill approving the sale of city-owned buildings, improvements, and 6 parcels located at 1600 St. Michael's Drive within the city and county of Santa Fe, New Mexico. Aspect QOZB LLC in 3 phases for a total of $5 million. We have Daniel Hernandez, our Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency Director, here to present, as well as a number of guests and other staff members. I am going to ask, as I know this has been a robust discussion, to have Mr. Hernandez provide a presentation so that we do have a clear understanding for any members of the public of what this discussion is, and then we can jump in. So, Mr. Hernandez, to you. Is your mic on?
Now? Yes.
Yes, there we
Yeah.
go.
Thank you, Counselor, and thank you, counselors, for the opportunity to present, which we didn't have a chance to on Monday night. So thanks again for allowing us to do that. I'm going to present the project from the perspective of the Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency and its advantages for moving Midtown forward, the redevelopment plans and the community development plan. And then Phil Jesue is here, who will present the plan of the development program, the proposal itself. And I'll cover a little bit in my presentation as well. Did you find it?
Chair, if that's been emailed, can that be emailed to us committee members so we could follow along while it's presented?
Has it not been permitted to the full committee? I apologize. Yes, if we could please get that email to the entire committee, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Oh, okay, so it should
Okay,
be there.
thanks.
Thank you, and I apologize. I appreciate it.
Did you all find it in your emails? Marcella, I don't think that, I'm not seeing it to the committee. Can you send that out again? Yes, please. Yeah, it's coming in. We just have to do the safe attachment screen, so. Are you all okay with us starting while it does its screening? Okay.
One of the primary statements within the community development plan, and I want to reiterate that the community development plan was unanimously approved by the governing body and unprecedented community support. But in the introduction, it talks about approaching all development at Midtown from a triple bottom line approach, which considers social impacts, environmental impacts, and economic impacts that benefit the public, the community. So in that, people call it triple bottom line accounting, true cost accounting, social impact investments. And what happens is typically the item that can be conventionally appraised at some value is done. But along with that are the externalities that center around social, environmental, and economic impacts. So in this slide, you see on the left side a series of monetization of the social, environmental, and economic impacts. So while an appraisal as a very early starting point without a lot of information about the property and or the development that would be proposed on that property, a starting point for the city was at $11.4 million. After about a year of negotiations and a little over a year, the due diligence that the developer did, spending money, time, and various resources in understanding the property and refining his proposal over the course of more than a year, the parties came together to negotiate from that starting point, and from him, what's called a residual land value, meaning after all of the costs that he will incur to redevelop the property, what is the value of the land at the end of that for him and the developer to be able to pay back debt and pay operating expenses for the life of that project. So in this true cost accounting or the social impact accounting investment strategy, you look at this appraised kind of value, but you also consider these externalities. So in actuality, while we have an 11.4 property, the overall transactional value is 12.4 million. So we're actually, transaction is benefiting the city by about $1 million. That is a transaction that we spent timeless meetings negotiating. But beyond that, there's a variety of other things that the city is getting out of the proposal that was in the development, in the developer's proposal itself. And you see that total at the bottom. So I'm calling those the below the line true cost accounting. So we have we have this property that's worth 11.4, but as I said, we're at an advantage point of about $1 million above that, plus the additional that you see. The two top line items that are there is something that I think is really critical and important that we've obligated the developer as a requirement to do, which is in the first 5 years, he is obligated to pay and invest in film production in order to have all these job creations, internships, other community benefits at I can't see the slide right now, but I believe it's $30 million for the first 5 years. And then after that, $150 million between years 5 and 15. So those are requirements that we put in that we would have not otherwise seen outside of a negotiation with the developers who's at the table, looking at actually trying to expand the community development benefits that were so important to the governing body and the various communities that came forward during the master planning process. Next slide. So what also the DDA, the Disposition Development Agreement, does not consider are the external and long-term economic impacts to the city. So in partnership with the Office of Economic Development, we provided a series of information, all of the capital costs the developer would be incurring and investing in the property, how many jobs would be created, and based on that investment slide that I showed you earlier, the types of economic benefits that are coming to the city of Santa Fe that were that are resulting directly from the investment, but also the spin-offs. So you see the salaries, the job creation that are not necessarily at the site, but that benefit from the huge production facility itself as it expands. That'll need ancillary services throughout the city, and the amount of salaries and jobs that those will create for private businesses around the city. And then finally, there was a negotiation in the lease terms that went beyond just the $300,000 that's a requirement for the lease payment, but also payment in lieu of taxes. This will be a city-owned property during the term of the lease. So as a city-owned property, we wouldn't be paying taxes on it, but we required him as a private person leasing public property to pay taxes to the city. So you see that calculation there for the term of the lease. So again, these are benefits that go way beyond the $11.4 million and get us close to $16 million that are part of the triple bottom line calculations. Next slide. Also, I've articulated here a series of benefits that come with having a large, what will be Northern New Mexico's largest film production studios, and all of the ancillary benefits. I won't go through them, but they're articulated here on the slide. And we have Jennifer with us tonight, who is the director of our film department, who provided a lot of this information based on her long experience at the county and the city in managing and bringing film to the city of Santa Fe. Slide. And then finally, there's been questions about understanding differences in appraisals, and I've articulated that an appraisal is not science. There's a lot of nuanced information that goes into the appraisals, and for the public and for the governing body and for this committee, I've tried to, well, what I have done is articulated here the different things that the appraisers look at. And the difference between our appraisal, which was looking at the property from its highest and best use, the highest value it could incur if it went out into the auction block, in considering everything that we wanted in the master plan, but it went out to an auction block without any negotiation, without any of the other items that we put into the disposition agreement. A site that was also ready for development, buildings that were ready to be reused, and how that calculation and the types of things that our appraiser looked at as a starting point. Again, the starting point is extremely relevant because all of the information, the negotiations we went through over the year, actually we then began monetizing and itemizing those community benefits, as you saw in an earlier slide. On the developer's appraisal, the developer already knew the proposal he was putting forward to us. So that had land value based on the uses that he was proposing. He had also done a lot of analysis and assessment of the building, the site, and the way that he thought that the city would want to see it redeveloped and that would benefit his business venture into the future. So that value was considered within that appraisal. It goes into further detail, and it's now before you as information. The other thing that I think is really important, which is the nuance that is very hard to value, are the redevelopment risks. So the developer has agreed to respond to an RFP on a site that is still untested, a market that is still untested, and he's confident and will remain confident, hopefully, throughout this process, that the city is going to perform as well. We have obligations to build up infrastructure that will support his development over time. He is expecting that we're actually going to redevelop Midtown so that he's not sitting sort of just little isolated redevelopment at the edge of Midtown, but he's depending on a broader marketplace, and that's our obligation to continue moving forward seamlessly, expeditiously, and efficiently with redevelopment of the remainder of Midtown. Those have costs. Those have costs to the developer who's investing his money, his time, his business in Midtown and in Santa Fe, but also to the investors and to the lenders who are looking at his project and like, really, that's going to happen? Those actually have cost implications on the way that these projects are underwritten by investors. So I articulated a lot of the development risks that a developer thinks about and actually values as part of an appraisal and looking at their development. I just have one more slide because Councilor Coster wanted me to address this, which was this project we did not anticipate actually having a residential component. But because of the developer buying the adjacent site, he's in the process now of getting his approvals for housing development there. But on our site, we have provided the opportunity for him to build between 99 to 150 units. That is still in design, so that's why we don't know, but we gave him the flexibility. We also negotiated with him that he would be required to fulfill the obligation that the city has with the inclusionary housing program, which requires 15% of any market rate development to provide affordable housing to low income and moderate income households. So these numbers were not part of the 1,100 total units that we had projected to be built at Midtown. This adds possibly another 100, which means that 30% of all units throughout the site applies to that increased number as well. It doesn't stay stagnant. It will always be 30% of whatever gets built at Midtown. There's been questions about how does that happen? Is it really going to happen? Yes, it's going to happen. There is not a doubt. And the reason I can say that confidently is because we own the property. We can dictate from RFP and disposition to disposition whether a parcel that we dispose of will be required to comply with the inclusionary, or we can not do one because we're getting some wonderful other community benefit, like a community center, and we're willing to benefit it on that project, but then do it on the next project and or increase the percentage on the next project. So we can be entrepreneurial and work with the developers where they are in the projects and negotiate like we did in this project to maximize our community benefits. That's the inclusionary program. The other thing is that we've also written into the community development plan that we will at least issue RFPs for 4 parcels throughout the site that will be 100% affordable. So we were able to calculate the types of parcels that we would need to build out those affordable units on those sites. So again, we have complete control of the land. So we're not left up to the market to decide like, yeah, yes, we want to do it. No, we don't want to do it. We can actually dictate what gets built on those parcels in order to achieve our 30% goals. And I believe that's the last slide. I'd
Thank
like to turn it over to the developer so you can see more about the project itself before we respond to any questions, if that's possible.
Sure, that would actually be wonderful. I do think this was a good overview for us that are already diving in deep. But Mr. Jesuit, if you could come up and give an overview of what we are discussing, I would greatly appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Do we have slides for this one too?
We do, yeah. And I'm actually going to skip the first couple because they may be redundant with some of the stuff that Daniel's gone over.
Okay, and could we also get those sent to the committee? Oh, thank you so much. You are so on top of it.
Yeah, but I'll just give you a summary. So I'm not sure how many people on the council have actually seen a full presentation about the project. So I'll give you a little bit of background and then I'll show you some pictures so that you can get a sense of what it is that we're actually doing on the site. I'm the principal of the firm. I have 30 years of experience developing urban infill projects. I've only really developed things in urban areas that are at the center of big and small cities. I've done projects in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is a city that's the same size, New York City, international cities. And now I'm able to bring some of the expertise and experience here. And mainly I've done residential and commercial mixed-use projects, so things that are very similar to this, not necessarily though with a film component. We acquired the Schelleberger Tennis Center 2 years ago and took advantage of an opportunity to convert that to production sound stages and also to pursue a residential development on part of that. Prior to our acquisition of that property, the city came out with its RFP for the properties that we're talking about tonight. And we took the risk that doing something that was more film-oriented may integrate well with the rest of the campus buildings. And so we converted the two sound stages. We're able to recruit a show, which was in the building for a couple years, and also to be lucky enough to get a second production on that show in the interim. We responded to the December 2022 RFP, and were conditionally designated as the developer for that. And over the last couple of years have worked on refining our proposal with the city of Santa Fe staff in virtually every department here. When it's combined, what we're going to do is take the Schelleberger that we own privately and that isn't on Midtown master plan property, and we're going to combine that from an operating standpoint with the rest of the properties in the RFP. They share property lines with one another, so they abut, and people who do film productions can actually walk back and forth. One of the benefits of doing this is that the Schelleberger has very large sound stages, which are critical to recruiting very large productions. And a lot of the production activity that's coming to New Mexico now, fortunately, is large public studios that are shooting $50, $100 million budget movies. Those movies are great for us because the people who come in can rent the entire campus or most of it. And it's great for the community because they produce a huge number of collateral jobs, between 500 and 1,000 jobs on a production of that size. It's not all year long, but those productions last for about 6 to 9 months. And then the challenge is keeping the studio full so that those jobs can be continuous throughout the year. They prefer to fill those jobs from Santa Fe, and there's a very deep crew base here. It's one of the reasons why Santa Fe continues to be successful as a location for film production. It's the beautiful scenery. It's a lot of the talent and above line people who are the decision makers like to come to Santa Fe, but probably the biggest reason is that we have a very deep talent pool of staff. And when we exhaust that staff in Santa Fe, they bring extra people from Albuquerque. So the state has become a very popular place to shoot now. When we combine this all together, we're going to have these 2 very large sound stages from the Schelleberger. We're going to have 2 more future sound stages as a part of phase 3 of this. We're going to have another sound stage at Driscoll that we're in the process, or we will be in the process of converting, and then 3 sound stages at Garson Studios. We'll also have, and that's about 120,000 square feet. We'll have about 110,000 square feet of office and support. That's critically important because there are so many support people who work on these projects, and they all need places to work. They need costumes. There's aging and dying. There's so many divisions in these productions that don't just use sound stages, but use other types of spaces. In addition, we're going to be creating educational space for Santa Fe Community College and Stagecoach. We got involved with them very early to find an educational partner. They do a pretty incredible outreach to the community, including Santa Fe High, which happens to be right across the street from the property. So young people can actually walk over, do training between HEC and on campus. And then we also have an obligation in the agreement to provide internships, up to 20 internships a year. And we would basically take these same people who've been trained and also other people who can be from high school age all the way up to 90 years old, and in the workforce and wanting to get practical training. Those people would come on to productions. We would facilitate that with the productions that are on our campus, and they would actually learn how to work on a production. We also have an agreement with IATSE that we've worked very closely with them for, along with Stagecoach and SFCC, where IATSE will actually allow training for these young people, and they can later enter the IATSE union here and actually become union card-carrying members. Before, it was difficult for us to do that because IATSE didn't want to let unpaid interns onto the production sound stages. We're creating the first cafe restaurant in the development, and not in the development, but in the neighborhood. Today, I work on site, and there's a lot of other people both in the city and at the other productions who work on site. It's a very difficult campus to get in and out of because there's only 2 entrances and it's a huge area. And then these are all super blocks around it. So to get a cup of coffee, you have to drive a couple miles just to get to the other side of the block that we're already on. So we're going to have food and beverage that'll be there for everybody to enjoy in the community, and also for the productions that come in. It's an attractive amenity for them so that they can have their people eat and do catering and other sorts of events on site. And they'll also do the same sorts of events for people who live in that area of Midtown, the West Side, who want to do special events. And then we're also going to be doing renovating the Screen. So the Screen Movie Theater, we're going to do a complete renovation on, turn it into a state-of-the-art facility. It's going to be open for community events. We have an obligation in the DDA to provide a certain number of events during the year and also to let the public use it. And then we're also going to operate it as a full-service cinema. So we've been in discussions with the people who run Violet Crown and CCA and a number of other groups to help us program and do all sorts of community events and regular movie screenings there, which are going to be really a great benefit to the local community that doesn't have a close movie theater. And then finally, we're going to be doing a couple 100,000 square feet of inclusionary housing. One of the phase 2 of this project is the redevelopment of a large parcel that's adjacent to Driscoll. That parcel is going to have between 99 and 150 units, so it'll have up to 22 affordable units that will have the same affordability guidelines that the city's home program provides for, which is a blend of low and moderate income. And then finally, the concept, which I think is very important, should be important to the city. The whole production business and industry in the United States and the world is becoming extremely competitive over the course of the last year. The production industry is not what it was 24, 36 months ago. There have been structural changes where streamers are no longer producing so much. Many of the streamers are going bankrupt or getting out of the streaming business entirely. And productions are going to be much harder to come by in the future, and they are today. So I spend most of my day on the telephone with studios trying to recruit them to come to Santa Fe. And that's because things have been significantly slower than they have since the COVID time. The remedy for that is to work harder, spend more marketing dollars, and try to recruit productions that come here. What we've done in that end is to create something we call a media village. Aspect Media Village is not just a name, it's a different concept that was revolutionized by our architecture firm, which is called Rios. They're out of Los Angeles, and they've built most of the big studios in Los Angeles. What they learned in that process is that Los Angeles, which is now fairly dense, you can't build a big studio with a wall around it anymore. The studios have to be integrated into the communities because there just isn't enough land to build these massive lots like in the past. So what they've done is they've created this studio village model where you might have a couple sound stages, there might be an office building across the street, there might be a cafe down the block or across another street, there might be housing nearby. And what they found is the people who produce actually like it better than going onto the big lots because they're not stuck in some kind of artificial industrial warehouse environment all day, every day for months and months on end. So that's the concept here. And that concept was a matter of making lemonade out of lemons. We had all these separate buildings. People always thought, how can they all be combined into a studio? There's no walls. And in fact, it's an innovative concept in and of itself. It just needs to be identified. We need walkways, we need landscaping, we need some of the supporting amenities, and those are all things that we're going to be doing as a part of our redevelopment. And the hope is that we have not just a studio here, but a studio that's innovative on a national and an international scale. Switch the slide. And this, I think, is the one that I'll skip over. This has a lot of community benefits that I think that you've discussed before, so I don't want to go and discuss each of these individual ones, and you have this presentation for yourself. And I'm happy to answer questions about any of them at the end. We'll go to a next slide, please. This is the map, which gives you an idea of the site plan and the phasing. So everything that you see in red is phase 1. We've also included Schelleberger in that, which isn't part of the RFP process, but it's going to be combined. And I think it's helpful to show it and how connected it is with the rest of the properties here. So phase 1 is essentially the renovation of Schelleberger, which has already happened. The construction of an apartment building on a vacant parcel of that, which is in for permitting right now. The redevelopment of the Driscoll Fitness Center and the creation of a stage and a cafe there. That'll happen immediately upon approval. Yeah, sure.
But we need somebody speaking into the mic, because if no one's speaking into the mic, then they can't hear it on the screen. So
Sorry.
if you
Okay, can you point out
Anna,
Driscoll?
yeah.
Yeah, that's Schelleberger. That is the new residential on the Schelleberger site. That's Driscoll. Garson is to the north of it. That's the Garson Center. Benildus Hall to the left. And then phase 2 is in yellow. That's the second phase residential building. And then phase 3 is in blue. That'll be new sound stages. The Benildus building is office and support space. That's also important. It's not in an ideal location, and it's now not really connected by a great roadway. But we have plans to put in temporary sidewalks so that everything can be connected, and there'll be ADA access between all of the buildings. And that building is important for all of the excess office people who come here for productions. You could go next slide, please. And this is an image of what the entry will look like upon completion of the project. When you come to the top of what really is Yucca, and you come to the stop sign right after HEC, today there's a vacant lot on the left and a vacant lot on the right. The vacant lot on the left is where the first planned residential building is, and the vacant lot on the right is where the planned sound stages are. And then up the street from these on the right is Garson and the Screen, and on the left is Driscoll, and then further up is Benildus. And this actually shows what the city's true streetscape is going to look like. So we actually took the 52A street design from the master plan and modeled it here, so you can get a sense of how wide the streets are going to be, how much landscaping, all of the transitional lanes that provide for pedestrian and bike access. Next slide, please. This is a rendering of the exterior of the first residential project that's on part of the Schelleberger site. Next slide, please. This is a conceptual rendering of the entrance of Aspect, which is the renovated Schelleberger building. And this is, so the way that we're going to connect everything, we have almost a mile of fences and perimeter of these properties. And one of the things that we've tried to do is create something that's very authentic and local and sustainable as a way to marry all these properties together and to replace a lot of the chain link fences and other things that are on the property. So we're going to be working with this split rail fence and creating something that's called a hedgerow. In Great Britain, they've had these hedgerows that for many years were essentially the borders between properties where people would put a pile of rocks. And over years, shrubs grew up and trees grew up, and they became their own ecosystem. So hedgehogs and their hedge sparrows and all these animals that inhabit these areas. The campus today has all kinds of wild animals on it. We have coyotes, an incredible number of prairie dogs, road runners, Cooper's hawks, and we all in the film business became very close with the Preservation for Prairie Dogs because they were out at the campus a lot while the prairie dog farms, and a lot of the people who were active in the productions wanted us to create areas where those could live. So this is just to show what this hedgerow is going to be New Mexico style. And it's essentially all the New Mexico and indigenous plants that can grow with xeriscape and without water or without any kind of irrigation. Next slide. And I show this slide as an important slide because it's a lot of what you'll see because there's a lot of vacant lots that are going to be used for what we call base camp, and that's where all of the trailers and everything else drive up for productions. So we wanted a way to beautify that and not have the whole campus look like industrial or a parking lot. This is some of the branded signage that we've created. So we'll have wayfinding that we'll put around the campus that will show people how to get between the various buildings. We're keeping the names of all of the buildings. So this is going to be called Aspect Media Village, but because there are a number of buildings and these buildings all have history that's associated with the campus and all different sorts of levels of history between Schelleberger, who is famous for tennis, to Benildus and Driscoll and Brie Garson, famous actress who donated money to create the studio originally for the campus, for the College of Arts and Design. So this will continue to utilize those names. Next slide, please. And then this is sort of, will give you a sense of the concept of these buildings. The buildings now are multicolored and we wanted to do something that was modern and fresh and made it feel like had a new life and also something that was reflective of the style for the rest of the campus. So there's a famous architect, Ricardo Legaretto, who designed the Visual Arts Center. And he was inspired by a guy named Barragan, famous Mexican architect. And so this is Barragan style, basically, which is whitewashed with pops of color. We wanted to do something that was acceptable to the city of Santa Fe's design code, but also something that felt a little bit poppier and a little bit more like it was appropriate for a film studio. And then all of the landscaping you can see is we don't show before and after, but the landscaping has all been redone. Next slide, please. And then we're working with a number of not-for-profits to try to find a home at this theater. So a lot of the time since I've come to town, I've spent working with Santa Fe International Film Festival to try to help them grow the film festival. We think it's an incredible source of marketing and PR for the town. It's also a cultural element that everybody in town who can scrape together $15 can go see an interesting movie. And it really supports the film industry here. It brings a lot of people to town who are interested in film and also as a fun thing for the community to do. So they need a home, a place to show films and a place where they can have some identity. So we've been talking to them about possibly getting involved in branding this and working on programming for the theater. Next slide, please. This is Driscoll's side entrance. Again, gives you the same concept of this Barragan where there's bright color and a sort of muted background. Again, something that's acceptable to Santa Fe planning, but also breathes new life into the property. Next slide, please. And then this is, so one of the key areas, and I don't have a better rendering than this, is the front of Driscoll. The front of Driscoll really is very close to the corner. It's in the center of the film campus, and it's also in the center of this giant block, which is like the bottom third of Midtown. So this is going to be the all-day cafe. We're going to renovate a couple of the classrooms or ex-classrooms that were at the front of Driscoll and put a real full-service restaurant there. So you can see, and this is open to the public. This is all public seating. And then outside of this, at the far end, which unfortunately we don't have a rendering for, is kind of like a public gathering space, public park, where people who are coming to the film studio, live in the neighborhood, walk in their dogs, can come here and hang out at the property. The other thing you don't see in the foreground here is the charging station. So we believe in solar and we believe in EV and electric sustainability. So this entire campus is going to be all electric. Everything that we do, every new building is going to be fully electric. There'll be no gas. They'll also have solar components, and they're also going to have a level 3 EV charging station. One of the issues with the EV charging is there are too few places where you can quickly charge EVs, and so we're actually having a like almost like a gas station here where cars can pull in and get charged and go into the cafe. And so this center of not only our film campus, but also Midtown will have a lot of life when it's complete, and these will all take about a year to be completed. I think this should be the last slide.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. We'll now jump to the committee unless there's any other members of staff that had anything to add at this time. We're good. Okay. I know that I pulled this. I believe others pulled this. Because this does have, I'm sure everybody has comments. Let's go with the 10-minute so that we can make sure that we all get into it. Because the three of you had an opportunity yesterday or Monday, I'm going to start with Counselor Faulkner, and I will keep time. So floor is yours.
A comment and then some questions. I'm going to date myself here, but I was a freshman at the College of Santa Fe when the Greer Garson studios were built and Sony was involved. I also worked on 2 movies as a student at the College of Santa Fe. I think this is a great idea. I think there's a lot of opportunity, but I have some questions about the housing. Is the housing going to be open to everyone in Santa Fe or just the people who will be working on them?
It's totally public housing. Open to the public, yes.
It's helpful. I do have some concerns about the price of the land. I've worked for developers. I know that there's formulas you can use that you can say something has a value that it doesn't necessarily have. I've seen projects go through the planning commission and city council that look amazing in the beginning, but then as the project moves through its phases, suddenly housing becomes something else because it's not possible for the project to be successful with the original plan. And so I hope there's some guarantees that, like, if we say we're getting housing, we're going to get housing. And if we say we're in Tierra Contenta, where I live, we've had many projects go through that were amazing in the master plan phase and then quickly became something else as the project moved along. And so I just want to be cautious about that and just make sure that the city's actually getting bang for the buck on this deal. We can't really put a value on intangible things, like what the community is going to get from it. We don't know the community is going to get the things that we're hoping it's going to get. This is like hope. It's not factual that we're going to get these things because we don't know what the market's going to do. We don't know how the project's going to change. We don't know how the financing is going to work as the project moves along. And so I just caution everyone, based on my experience on the planning commission, I tell you that this is a great project. I'm not against it, but I also want to be cautious about how much we put value on things that are not tangible things.
Can I just make one comment in that regard? This deal is unusual in the sense that everything that is being described to you, I'm contractually obligated to do. And the city has 4 pages in the DDA of defaults that they can put me under and another 2 pages of remedies. So if I were not to provide the community education program, or if I weren't to do the residential portion, or if I were late providing my plans to you, you can notice me, put me into default and take the property, even after I've invested money to improve it. So I think the city, in this case, the year and a half of time we've spent in negotiations has been with a big group of attorneys on behalf of the city. They've negotiated a long and tight agreement for the city. And everything that we're saying we're going to do here, we're contractually obligated in the DDA to do.
Just to follow up on that, I'm also a lobbyist for a living, and I can tell you that laws and contracts change all the time. And I'm not against this project. I'm just cautious about it because I feel like we're not getting enough money for what we've invested in the property. And we still have to do the infrastructure part of it. Like the city's still on the hook for a lot. And so my concern, and it's nothing to do with you, I think you guys are awesome. It's more about just knowing how the process works, and that just because there's a contract in play doesn't mean that at some point the city and the developer don't agree that the contract no longer is viable and we can change it as it moves through the process. And so I really respect you guys and what your vision is, but I am cautious about this project because it's a big lift and the city's still on the hook for some things. And I'm not sure $5 million is what is a good price. I feel like we should ask for a little bit more, but I'm not against the project. I'm cautious about how projects change as we move through the phases.
So this is Daniel Hernandez again speaking. I understand the concern. I mean, one of the things that I bring to the project is actually this particular project is working on large scale, multi-phase, multi-year projects in different cities that have similar infrastructure problems. They were old shipbuilding yards. They were old steel building yards. Then they have lack of infrastructure, no parcelization. And what I've grown over the past 35 years doing is actually learning where the tweaks are in redevelopment plans to make sure that the obligations that city, a municipality, or an authority wants to make sure happens over a course of time, that those things are embedded in the redevelopment plan. So in this case, we have reviews so that if and when the developer brings in the next phase, we have a review at the Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency to make sure that it's consistent with the vision that was articulated in the master plan, the community development plan. From there, it will go to the Planning Commission to make sure that all of the zoning, the setbacks, heights, et cetera, are in compliance with the master development plan. This case it's not a long-term, it's not a 10, this developer's project is not like a 10-year project. It's most likely 5 years. So within that time, we feel confident that what he is committed to and his obligations are implementable and that they're manageable, that we'll be able to fulfill the vision. And like he said, all of those obligations that we talked about are in the are in his development agreement, and not fulfilling his obligation, not performing on any of them is a term for default. And there are huge ramifications if he defaults on any of those. So again, I feel very confident that I know that there's lots of projects where they begin to renegotiate issues. We do not want to renegotiate the master plan. We do not want to renegotiate the community development plan. And there's no intent right now of renegotiating this development agreement because of the amount of efforts that we've put into making sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
And again, my concern isn't necessarily just the developer. So I've seen the city do things that change project, like allow things to happen, that change projects and change the vision of like allow a project to shift. So it's not about picking on the developer. I've worked for developers. I know how hard what they do is. It's not as simple as the public thinks it is. But I'm also concerned that the city might do some things as well that would not make this, we wouldn't get the most that we could get out of the project. And it's nothing against any person at the city. It's just the way the city has managed projects in the past that I personally have seen.
Just to clarify, any contract changes would have to come back through the governing body, correct? Okay. Thank you, Councilor Faulkner. Let me get my timer going. I can just move down the line unless you guys have a preference on who goes first. If not, then Councilor Garcia.
You, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming in front of us again. I appreciate it. I'm going to dig into the community benefit since that's kind of what we were just talking about. It was mentioned that a lot of the development will happen over 5 years, but a lot of the community benefit extends way beyond that, some even 20 years. And so that's where I got some concerns in regards to what are the mechanisms that are in place, Mr. Hernandez, to ensure that community benefit is met?
Well, the development agreement articulates what happens after the phases have been completed, and it describes the requirements beyond the term of each phase. So the obligations will run with the development agreement, which runs those full 20 years and beyond.
My question more so revolves around what infrastructure, what mechanisms, what systems, what reports, how is the city ultimately going to track and ensure that the community benefit requirements are met?
We will continue to monitor them as a redevelopment agency. I mean, these are projects that happen all over the country, and redevelopment agencies and cities monitor contracts to make sure that the performance of the developer is in compliance with the development agreement.
It sounds good in theory, but in practice, as a
happens.
counselor sitting here, that doesn't happen. I mean, and I can give you an example. There are certain reports that are to be given to the city council. City manager is supposed to report to the city council twice a year. That doesn't happen. There are certain things that are supposed to happen that just doesn't happen. And I think that is something that needs to be included in this agreement. There needs to be some type of description of a plan and infrastructure, ultimately that is going to allow for a sustainable tracking of this process. So that's one recommendation I have, that I won't agree to this until that's in place here. Regards to clawbacks, what clawbacks are in place? Okay, well, Pat's looking that up. Maybe I can go to a different one. Sure. I've read it, and I think a lot of these questions are more so for the public consumption. I understand, Mr. Hernandez, but you have to understand, half of this process is ensuring that the public is getting information. And that's, so that's what a lot of these questions will revolve around, and ensuring that there's.
The mic, I'm sorry, is the mic on or are you speaking fully into it?
I apologize. In the DDA, I'm obligated to comply with all of the terms of the DDA. Section 11, which has to do with community benefits, has a very long tail on it that goes all the way to the end of all these. And there are different fines and penalties that are for all of the items in Section 11. And Section 11, Section 11 also is part of a deed restriction that's going to get filed with the deed of the property. So it's not just an agreement that's going to get lost. It's actually going to be part of my title if I were ever to refinance or sell the property. Section 11 would be filed with it. And so there are pretty strong teeth for enforcing those mechanisms to the end of the 20 years and the rest of the periods of time that those items are supposed to be provided.
I understand that, but I think then it gets back to the first point. It's going to require city staff to ensure that that's being done. So in regards to kind of the benchmarks, can you help me understand the time period? Because it seems like there's a certain benchmarks that need to be met by 5 years, and then there's benchmarks that need to be met by 15. Am I understanding that correctly? And if that's the case, why not much more frequency in the benchmarks to ensure?
I'll describe that. So what you're referring to is one element of the community benefits.
Right.
That element is the creation of jobs and production activity on the campus. That has a 15-year total horizon to achieve $150 million of economic development activity. There's a 5-year horizon on it because the completion date for phase 1 is 2 years from today. And the completion date for the next phase is roughly 18 months from the end of that period, and the next phase roughly 18 or 24 months from the end of that period. So if you put all those together and we're able to get our permits and plans approved on a timely basis, it's more or less a 5-6 year build out for everything. So that time frame they thought was a good first marker to see how production activity has gone. And then the second marker is beyond that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And
It's only for that element. Nothing else is, has that calculation.
okay. Mr. Hernandez, I appreciate you sending your presentation. I do got some questions around the appraisals, and since it was brought up tonight, I'd like to know who completed this page that's on page 4, understanding the differences in appraisals, because I think that can be taken into context by the individual completing it. And I think I have even more of a bigger challenge, given that it's come to my attention that there was a review appraisal as well conducted for this property, and it's not included on this chart. And I think if we're going to be completely reviewing the appraisals that have been conducted on this property, we need to include everything. And so for the public's awareness, there was the city's appraisal done in November 23. Mr. Jessue's appraisal was done in February 23. Now, months after, because there was conflicting appraisal prices, the city had a review appraisal conducted by a third appraiser, which had a appraised value of, from what I understand, about $16 million. So I'd like to have that column added to this report. But in addition to that, I'd like to have a copy of that appraisal, and I'd like to have a copy of that appraisal included in the packet because it's critical information. It really demonstrates the value and ultimately how we move forward with the sale of this property. Because as I mentioned on Monday, I believe the $5 million cash offer is not sufficient. now when we start taking into consideration the additional appraisals on the property, I think we need to do some renegotiating. So those are some additional asks. And with that, I think I have more questions. I think my 10 minutes is up, but I do want to caution us in moving forward until we have that information. I'd like to be able to review that appraisal before this committee decides how we move forward out of this committee. If we want to approve it, not recommend, et cetera, but I think that's my opinion, that we should take this sufficient time to review this proposal. So with that, I'll yield the floor because I think my 10 minutes is up, Madam Chair.
Just about, did you have a response to the appraisals?
No, there wasn't a question. I bet I understand the direction.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Chavez, to you.
I do. And I don't expect any of this to be answered now, but I think that I would request that when we see you all again, that we do have some more input from the city attorney's office and understanding the agreement. I know you said there's going to be ramifications if certain things are met. But I think hearing from the city attorney's office on helping us have an understanding of what those are will bring some understanding. And I would ask that they're involved in that conversation come. I don't know if
Ms. Fagali, are you able to answer some of these questions? I know that you are the attorney that is in charge of this project, or the lead on this project from the CAO.
And so the reason why I'm saying in the future is because I think it would be nice to have a summary of what some of those ramifications are based on the conversation that we're having and we had at Public Works, because I think there's some consistency in the questions that we've been asking, and just having, more confidence that what is being presented to us will actually be followed through with. And it sounds like that has been negotiated and agreed upon, and we have things in writing as to why those have to be met, or there will be, ramifications as what was mentioned. So a summary of that. I know we keep adding information to this, but I think the understanding of the negotiations to what the finished product would be, and that being very clear, is going to be important for the community.
So yeah, we can prepare something for you. I don't have a written out list that is all in the PDA and in the lease, but we can pull those out for you.
I think that would be really good. And even just kind of having it in a presentation, especially just the things we highlighted, like what was agreed upon for those key components, the housing, the community benefits, and if that's not met, kind of what those guidelines would be in addressing it. I think it would just be helpful to have that clearly stated for the community and it available to the public. Thank you.
Counselor Chavez, anything else today? Nope. Counselor Castro.
Thank you so much. Thank you again for presenting. I also have a myriad of questions from how do we make sure, I know we said that we had 20 internships at the top end. What is that really going to look like? How are we going to make sure that it's local youth that are filling these internship positions and being hired? When I hear 800 to 1,000 jobs, is that per production? How many productions are we seeing throughout the year? We are talking about the capacity of, and thank you so much, Councillor Faulkner, for, I think we have heard in this chamber that we need more housing specifically for productions. And my concern is that it's going to be used short-term and not really be used for housing in our community, which, as you may not know, we have a transitional housing space there that needs a home and is looking for a place to rent. And those 150 units would be invaluable for the people in this community that need those spaces. There is an open house on Friday at Consuelo's place if you'd be interested in seeing that space and talking to some of the folks. But yeah, how can we quantify? And again, with my co-counselors, I don't know that today we're going to answer all of these questions. But yeah, any thoughts?
Okay, so in terms of housing, I don't think that the demand from the productions is gigantic. I mean, the first building that we're going to do is about 130 units, and many people who work on these productions are local people. So they drive in back and forth. So of the 1,000 jobs, Most of them are grips and people who do lighting and electricians and carpenters. And the people who actually come with the productions are a much smaller number. So I think our intention is to have a certain number of units that are furnished and furnished rentals. Maybe it's 10 or 20 units in a building. Those would be rented on a local basis. And then when and if a production came into town, they would be short-term rentals. So they might be anywhere from a month to 6 months. And we would have advance notice of when the productions come, and we would make those available for the productions. But the rest of the spaces in the building will be public and open to the public. I don't think that there is a demand to rent all of the units in the building as much as there is a local demand for those. I think that you need them far more locally than you do for the productions. So the goal is to have a small number of furnished units that would, like I said, be short-term rentals. They'll be a fraction of the total, and everything else will be open to the public or inclusionary affordable. Which is also open to the public, obviously.
Thank you for that answer. I think that the idea of short-term rentals on Midtown campus perked all of our ears up because in my opinion, we don't need any more short-term rentals, especially in that area. But we can cross that bridge when we get there. I'm sure we'll be having a lot more conversations. I am also concerned about the electrical that we were talking about at Public Works. If you were to develop the electrical in Midtown, would you be charging other parcels to connect to your electrical grid?
No, the electrical grid is going to be owned. The unfortunate thing about the electric is we pay to bring it in, but it's owned by PNM. So PNM won't bring it in for a small number of buildings. And even when you do have a larger number of buildings, they generally make you pay to bring in the backbone infrastructure, and then they hook it up to whoever they want.
You're currently operating some productions near those parcels currently. Is there infrastructure, electrical infrastructure now, or how are you?
Now, one of the reasons we're paying to do this, and one of the reasons we're paying to do it now in advance of the city's infrastructure work, is that the first production that came onto our site, which was Outer Range, they had to rent very expensive generators, both natural gas and diesel generators. All of these production companies we're talking about have environmental and DEI obligations and standards. They don't like to use fossil fuels, and they really want to be connected all electric. Unfortunately, the Schelleberger has a 400 amp panel. We need 4,000 amps. The campus doesn't have that to give to us, so that's why we're paying to bring that in. And the rest of that infrastructure also needs to be used to disconnect those other buildings. So the timing and our willingness to pay for it all has to do with its absolute need on the campus today. And not today, we're empty today. We're looking for a production, but if a production came in tomorrow, they'd have to use the generators again because we still haven't gotten permission from PNM to build the infrastructure, but we're close.
So I'm going to go ahead and cede the floor. Still have a lot of concerns. I would like to, and I will allow my other counselors to ask more questions. I would like to see this back at quality of life personally, and I might make a motion in that effect later.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Antonis.
People will frequently use the term short-term rentals to describe these. These are not short-term rentals. They're units that have been set aside specifically for crew, and they aren't short-term rentals that trigger the short-term rental regulations of the city. Any owner can set aside units for use for their own, and that's what this developer is doing. And it will be more than 30 days. So they're not part of, they will never be part of that inventory of short-term rental that would qualify or have to be licensed for that purpose.
Yes, thank you for that definition. That was important, is that short-term rental very specifically speaks to rentals of 30 days or less. I do have a number of questions, but if there are any members of the committee that would like a second round, I'm happy to go ahead and give that to you all now. Go ahead, Councilor Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, this property lies within the Midtown Link overlay. So are you planning on using any of the potential waiver of fees as you propose to develop this property?
I am for the first phase for the Art House property. And anything that's available under the regular zoning designation, we would use. So I haven't, analyzed exactly what's available to us, but whatever's in your code, we would use.
Okay, so that's something that I think that needs to be highlighted, because the way I look at how we're wanting to move forward with developing the Midtown campus is it's a partnership. And any part of the partnership that the city provides should be highlighted, especially the waiving of fees. There's certain requirements that are part of the overlay. And so that's where I don't want folks to be misled in the sense that, for example, because we're wanting all electric, just by going all electric, it's going above and beyond. It's the requirement, the water savings requirements. So there's a lot of requirements that are part of this area that I just want to make sure, Mr. Hernandez, that wherever the city's helping out, that it's highlighted, because that's the intention of the overlay corridor. Now, in regards to affordable housing, is that required is that an obligation? Because, and the reason I ask is part of the development that occurred at Schellenberger, there was no affordable housing developed. There was a fee paid for that. And I'm just going off of what the local media reported, that those units will be for rent at between $1,200 and $2,200, I think, which is not affordable for Santa Fe residents. So I think my concern is that if it's not in writing and if it's not part of the agreement, that it needs to be there. So can we get clarification if that if it's going to be required that it cannot be opted out?
It cannot be. It's very specifically described in the development agreement that it must be inclusionary housing.
Okay. Thank you. I just wish it was the 30% that we're hoping for the whole campus. So now, in regards to the information you provided me, Mr. Hernandez, around the lease payments, I really appreciate you sending that. Really showed the value that the property currently brings. If you look back, and thank you for providing me the stats, back to 2019 to 2023, I see it as a profit for the city. And so just so I'm making sure I'm not misreading the data you provided me the revenue generated, but then you also provided the city operating expenses, which I assume is for the entire campus, not solely for these 6 parcels.
That's just for this area.
So you're telling me in 2019, when nobody was on that campus, we paid $130,000 for HVAC? And then every year after that, we paid 136, 141, 145, 150.
The buildings were operating during that time, and those were utility bills.
Okay, so why is those expenses coming at us then? Don't we have an agreement with somebody that is operating the facility?
So the upper level talks about the income that came into the city based on the license agreement that the current lessee has. The operations for that came out of those amounts of money to pay for those utility bills as well.
Because I know who you rent it to, because they're going to be involved with running the new studio. You rent it gross to them, which means you pay all the operating and maintenance costs and other costs of maintaining the campus, and they pay you a gross rent per square foot.
Okay. So
those are the itemized line items below there that we're paying for.
I'd like to dig deeper into that, because those costs are extremely high. And for example, when we're looking at real estate taxes, $132,000 a year on those 6 parcels for real estate taxes. So this is something I'd like to dig into deeper, because $44,000 for security. We've $17,000, and this is just going into 2019.
I apologize. Where are you looking, Counselor?
Mr. Hernandez provided, in Public Works and Utilities, I had asked for a breakdown of the fees, and so this isn't available online. And we could, if we can, let's add this as part of the package, just so the public has.
And if we could please get that sent to the rest of the committees.
Just to clarify, Counselor, Counselor Garcia wrote to a staff person in the Office of Economic Development requesting information, and that was forwarded to me. And I had already done some of this analysis previously, so I sent this spreadsheet.
Okay.
Right, and the request came to you, so,
It actually came to Terry Lease, and
but I asked you on
forwarded-
Monday night for this information, did I
Yeah.
not? Correct,
Yeah,
Mr.
so I was
Hernandez?
working on it,
Okay.
but he
Thank you
received.
for clarifying that. So I think if we can get the breakdown of these, because this, again, to have a straight figure of, for example, 2023, we're just going to look at the expenses provided for 2023 at the at those, now what it's saying for those 6 areas, $150,000 across the board. That's so what I want to be able to do is rely that these numbers are accurate. So
And as I said in my email to you this afternoon, that we're verifying those, that this was sort of a rush, but we wanted to get you something because you told the staff person that you wanted something before this evening's meeting. So in order to comply with that, we sent this, which all of the figures have not been verified. It takes a while to do that, to look up old accounting figures from previous years. So we're in the process of verifying that. So respectfully, I would ask that you respect that time frame, that we're still doing the research.
Sure. I mean, but it's ultimately, it's not that hard to pull the figures, the costs analysis.
Chair, I feel like if we request items from staff, and I might be wrong, but I would imagine we'd have these conversations with staff, especially if we don't all have those items to be part of the discussion. So this is making me feel a little
Yeah,
out of
'cause
place.
And not having this data, I would agree, is
I'm-
not,
I'm
not
happy to
helpful.
change topics.
Thank
if
you.
that
I'm
way
sorry, and
everybody-
I don't
No,
mean-
no, it's
I would,
understandable.
you're bringing up some good points, but I don't have it in front of me, and I feel like maybe there needs to be a second look as well because the item was rushed. And so if we maybe all have it before governing body, then we could all have a conversation around it just because I have nothing to reference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, I mean, if we can get them as quick as possible, I mean, because I'm of the same mindset of Councilor Castro that this item come back before this body. There's a lot of information that needs to be addressed. And this is the last time I have the opportunity to address this item before it goes to governing body. And as the mantra has said, the work is done in committee, not at governing body. And so I'd like to get the work done in committee. Last question, and it's, I guess maybe this is for legal. If we would like to make changes to this proposed ordinance, would we just take a typical amendment process?
Counselor, are you referring to the bill or to the?
Yeah, to
actual
the bill.
DDA? Because the.
To the bill.
disposition agreement, yeah, the changes to the bill would be through a regular amendment process, but if there need to be changes made to the actual document, that's gonna take a lot longer because there are a lot of interlocking pieces of the 60-page document. Make sure any changes were consistent.
Right. Well, and I guess that's where I've got concern because at least I was not part of the negotiation process. And if the governing body would like to take a stance in where they want to negotiate, that could be done through amendment, which would then direct a renegotiation for the DDA. Am I understanding the process correctly?
I believe so, but there's nothing to say that we can renegotiate anything with the developer. I mean, he is a separate entity. He can say no, walk away.
Understandable.
I don't know how long it would take to go through that whole document. So certainly you can, amend what you want. I just don't know what that result.
Understandable, but I think it's important that the governing body has an opportunity to provide input in regards to what they would like to see as part of the process or the negotiations process. And you know, as I stated on Monday, that $5 million cash offer is too low based off of the appraisal that have been completed. And
I would just remind everyone on the council that there was an exclusive negotiating agreement that was entered, which is what this disposition agreement is based on. So the council did provide guidance in that ENA, which granted was over a year ago at this point. So staff has been working based on that guidance towards this. This didn't come out of nowhere.
understandable, but the price was not talked about. There
Price
was,
was talked about, the price is in the ENA. It was an RFP, there was a price. It is not exactly what we ended up with, but it was never $11 million.
okay, well, I'm not comfortable with the price. And so I don't know if any others are. And I think that's where if others are in that same position, we should have the opportunity to make a counter offer, so to speak.
Counselor, your time is up at this time. Is there anybody else in the committee? Counselor Faulkner, you wanted another 10 minutes?
Yeah, I would just say that I too have concerns, but I do think it's not good governance to negotiate from the dais. I think it puts everyone involved at a compromised position. It's more reactive than thoughtful. And then nothing against my colleague. I understand the frustration. I have some of the same frustrations, but I do have concerns about allowing the council to negotiate from the dais. I think it's not a good way to negotiate contracts.
Thank you, Counselor. Anything else? No. Counselor Chavez?
I was just going to say, I feel like we're also jumping ahead when we're talking about renegotiating. I think there's a lot of things that have been brought up and information that's needed so that not only we are clear, but also the community. And the more information we have, though, the better we could communicate to the community. I think talking about renegotiating is jumping 20 steps ahead of where we're currently at. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot more information needed. And I apologize because I know how much work you guys have already put into the presentation and you're trying to give everything to us. But, you know, we're just digging deeper and deeper. So I want to thank you for being flexible and patient and understanding and willing to continue putting work into this. But it really just comes down to having an understanding and getting everyone in a place where renegotiating is not something that we necessarily have to think about. Because that's my goal. I want an understanding where we can move forward with this, where I feel comfortable communicating to the community about it. And I think a lot of us are in that place right now, is we just need more information. So that's where I'm at. And I want to also acknowledge the work and your willingness to continue working to make sure that we have that clarity.
Thank you, Counselor Chavez. Counselor Castro?
I just want to echo those same sentiments. I think that we've all been getting emails and calls. The community is concerned and very much engaged, and we know what that looks like when folks need a little more information. So if everyone is okay, I would like to move that we actually table this until our next meeting, which is December 4th.
I have not had an
Oh,
opportunity.
I
to vote yet.
apologize. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I will go ahead and take my opportunity at this time. So a couple things. I agree that having a really strong understanding is important for us. Obviously, this is a really big decision. This is the first project. This is the anchor project of Midtown, which means it's a big risk for us and it is a big risk for you as well. And I do think that is important as we consider this. I think understanding some of the differences in the appraisals, and I'll get there, but I did also go back to the community development plan, and I will go back to what I have said about Midtown over and over and over again, and that is the social investment in this property. When I really think about our conversations around Midtown and how it is important for the future. Yes, covering our costs is important. Looking at the financial well-being of the city is crucial. But when I look at the reasons that people leave the city or the reasons that my peers do not come home, a lot of it has to do with jobs, housing, and entertainment. And so I think that I really actually appreciate, because we asked for this in the community development plan, this conversation of the triple bottom line. And I remember these conversations around how do you quantify this? And that it's hard to quantify. So I really appreciate you putting that forward, because we had asked for that as we were having these discussions around dispositions. How are we going to really be able to analyze these aspects, and are we getting what we asked for? So I did have a chance to go back to the community development plan today. And really what I saw here was our the guidelines. We had 4 guiding principles. And the very first one is sustainable development. And it says, adopt a triple bottom line approach to development that seeks to balance and improve social, environmental, and economic impacts and benefits for developing the Midtown site. So I am not surprised that this is a conversation, as I know at that point we had really discussed how we're going to balance this, what these challenges are going to be. We have discussed that for the affordable housing, because we are looking at a 30% site-wide, not in every single parcel or every single development, that there will be times that we're going to really give things away for very, very cheap, because we are going to want those parcels to be 100% affordable, or 60%, or something that would not be economically feasible for a developer if they had to go through the normal costs of development, normal land costs, infrastructure. So that said, I do want to jump into the differences in appraisals and make sure that I'm understanding this accurately. When I am looking at, I guess, the different philosophies, the different assumptions of the appraisals, the big difference I see is that the 11 million and change was really looking at this being a shovel-ready site, for lack of a better word, that we're not going to have a ton of remediation on the buildings, that there wasn't going to be a lot of infrastructure needs. And the lower appraisal is looking at this of what does this actually need to be brought to a place where this can be possible. I know that there's still some of the infrastructure that we are going to do, because it is public right-of-ways, so some of the stormwater, some of the streets, and that the developer will be doing some of the other pieces. As you mentioned, the electrical grid, which Councilor Garcia did say, that is required. So we have required this being all electric. So if the developers are not doing it, we're doing it. What is the cost of what this is going to look like to, update this electrical grid, that we are requiring this occurs because it is our property and we do get to require that?
That one infrastructure item is approximately 1.5 million. It's $600,000 to bring in the backbone, and then every building on site needs to be disconnected from the city's electric grid and then reconnected to the grid in the street. And that means new transformers and switches, and they're incredibly expensive.
And that also means removing the ones that are there and disposing of them?
Removing it, disposing them, disconnecting it, getting rid of all the excess electric lines that are from the old grid, and reconnecting these buildings just to the street. So we basically start out with what we have and that you see today, no value added, but we flush $1.5 million instantly.
And then I know that there is one of the buildings has to come down. I forget which one it is.
Oñate.
Oñate. What's the cost of demolition?
Oñate is about $100,000 plus asbestos remediation. And then that site, which runs along Driscoll and really runs all the way to the west end of the campus, has a large amount of other demolition that needs to be done, tennis courts and tennis light poles and that sort of stuff.
Okay. And then I know that there is the street that runs in front of the property of the project. It is one of the major thoroughfares through Midtown, so we will be taking on a good amount of that. But you are going to be in this proposal, paying, I assume that essentially, I believe that there'll be some money put in escrow, and then depending on what the actual amount is, we'll settle that. Do we know what percentage of this is going to look like? I saw a formula in there that was a little bit complex. Do we have an estimate as to how much that's going to be at this time, or not quite yet?
It's probably, of that road, it's probably a quarter of it.
Okay.
And I'd also mention that I'm donating that land to the city.
Oh, okay.
So I own to the middle of the street along the Schelleberger site, and the city wants, the Schelleberger site isn't part of the Midtown campus. And so we're actually contributing a little over a half an acre of land to the city for its public street right away as a part of this deal.
Okay, and we're not having to eminent domain pay you for that one?
You're not paying me for it, no.
Okay. Do we know what the price of that would have been? I apologize.
Itemize that on the first slide, the donation of land for public right-of-way.
Of the fiscal net benefits, oh, I'm sorry, I was not on the first page. Thank you.
It's about, I think it's
Oh, there it is, 300,000. Okay. Okay, thank you. I think that this is important for us to consider, and I agree that there's a lot of this additional information. How we distill things out of legalese is very helpful, because not all of us speak legalese, and understanding some of the different appraisals that apparently have come in that were not discussed or included, as well as, what is the city's cost for this is going to be really important. But I think that as we look at this, there is a lot that the city would have to take on in order to bring Midtown up to a really like shovel-ready developable property as a whole. When we talk about the full whole, 64.2 acres. What was the estimate that we were given initially for how much total infrastructure has to be done on the entire property?
In those early days in like 2020, 21,
It was 30
it was
million?
30 million.
It's probably higher now, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I do think that is important as we look at this, and I think the word partnership was brought up, and I agree, this is a partnership. And, as I mentioned, this is the anchor project. This is the first thing happening on this property. I do think that there is a high risk for Midtown to fail. And that risk is important, but also I do think that the additions to the infrastructure, and that was one of our big conversations, was how are we going to pay for all of the infrastructure that has to happen on this property? And there are a variety of sources that are coming in. Of course, we continue to ask the legislature for money. We will continue to do this. I know we've talked about tax increments. But we did also say that this will be part of our negotiations, is getting developers to assist with some of these really heavy infrastructure needs. And I just want to bring that up because these conversations have been happening over the last, gosh, when did we take Midtown back?
2018.
But when did we take it back after the pandemic? 21, 22?
Yeah.
Around there. So it's been about 3 years.
Yeah.
That we have been having a lot of these conversations. So I just want to, some of my colleagues were not here at this time, and also for the public, there's been a lot of these conversations about this is what this is going to look like, and here we are coming to fruition with it. The other piece that I hear brought up, and then I will have hit my 10 minutes, and I will cede the floor if anybody else wants another 10 minutes, is the oversight piece. I think what is important there is that that's not the developer's responsibility in terms of things that we're concerned that the city has. Yes, it is his responsibility to make sure that he abides by the agreement. But that is on us if we are not feeling that there is, that our structures are in place to be getting the reports back. So I would not want us to punish the developer for shortfalls within our city government structure. But that does bring me to the MRA. And if I and it may actually, I'm not even going to ask or say what I understand. Daniel, if you could tell me a little bit more about MRAs and why we have established an MRA for Midtown and where we are with this process and how the MRA would interact with this project.
MRAs, and they're called redevelopment agencies in various cities around the country, which I've either worked for or been a developer interacting with redevelopment agencies. They're specifically created to bring the real estate acumen that's necessary to both get property redeveloped as well as monitor those properties over the time that the redevelopment agreements exist and beyond, because part of what a city wants to do is make sure that they are really good real estate partners to get the type of redevelopment that they want to see in their cities. And that means they serve as asset managers, and that's why we have asset managers and job descriptions in the Office of Economic Development, and in my office, asset managers that will look at properties that exist as well as properties that we redevelop under the MRA itself. It is created specifically to do these kinds of monitoring and negotiations to make sure that the public is getting the best deal that meets the expectations and desires of the public through the planning process. So that's my obligation. That's why the MRA was created for the city. It does not exist in the city right now. There's different things that happens in different departments, but it will be centralized inside of the Metropolitan Redevelopment Agency.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that is a really important piece of, some of the concerns that my colleagues have expressed is we are very correct. We have not had good mechanisms to ensure or to monitor what has been promised from development. We also, in a lot of our developments, when they come and change, we don't have the ability to just take back the land, no matter what improvements have already been made. So there are some key differences here. And I do think the establishment of the MRA is incredibly crucial as we think about the things that we want to make sure are delivered. Because we are setting up a new mechanism in order to track and if we need to, take advantage of some of those clawbacks as necessary, not just for this project, but throughout the site. I am over my 10 minutes. I do still have some more questions. If there are still other questions from the members of the committee, I will go ahead and take that. Councilor Faulkner.
I just think we've done 2 rounds already. And
That is true. I've only
is
done
there-
one.
is-
I'm not done. Maybe I'll take my other 10 right now.
But also, I think is there anything prohibiting us to meet with staff and talk about this to get more details outside of this process?
Absolutely not. And I know that Mr. Hernandez has reached out did you reach out to every member of the governing body?
Yes, Counselor.
So if you have not had an opportunity to go meet with Mr. Hernandez at Midtown, I know that was offered. I did take advantage. I did find that very helpful. So definitely recommend that. I'll go ahead and take my second 10 real fast. I may not do a full 10. I actually do want to talk about the economic development piece because that is a key component here. And we do have Ms. Labar Tapia as well as Director Nelson here. So film is one of our, key growth areas. I'm sorry, what is the term that we always use?
Madam Chair, targeted industry.
Thank you. Can you speak a little bit, both Director Nelson and Ms. Labar Tapia, about film in Santa Fe and the economic impact? And I would love to hear your perspectives on this project. And when we are looking at it, not just, I know we frequently will talk about GRT, but a lot of us are very concerned, or I'll speak for myself. I know I am very concerned about job creation and job opportunities for our local community. The internships are wonderful. Partnering with our youth, I think, is incredibly important. Again, how do we keep our youth? How do we get them back? So I will turn it over to the two of you to speak a little bit more on that.
Madam Chair, counselors, thank you for inviting me up to speak. So in terms of economic development and film, there's many components to it. There's the actual individuals that are in the industry that are high-paying jobs, all different kinds of jobs. We have the trades in this industry, from the construction and the the painters, the grips, the electricians, everybody that it takes to actually build a set and get the sets up and going. And then we have production assistants. We have the producers, the above the line, which are your directors, screenwriters, producers. So we have all different levels in the industry itself that are all really good paying jobs. Having said that, with also economic development, we have the supporting vendors. And that's where we look at our community, and you look at the florists, you look at the dry cleaners, you look at our local hardware stores, you look at our yoga instructors for the talent that need to have their morning yoga and they want to do it in their Star Wagon. I say that, but it's true. And we need the dog sitters, and we have all those other individuals that could take advantage of the industry being here, where they don't really realize, oh, I could be on a set and I could be a part of this industry in my own profession. And so it touches on so many different businesses throughout our community that are already established. So not only are they the ones that are in the industry, but also all of our supporting vendors that contribute to this industry being here.
And Jennifer, we have a list on, I know there's the website where essentially if you are a local business owner, you can go onto this website, you can register your business. If you're, an acupuncturist or, yoga instructor or whatever the case may be. And this is the, essentially the productions will go to this, in order to find people who are local to get these things done. Because again, they're here for a really long time. I do know myself some businesses that have benefited from this, and individuals coming in and have had some, good paying clients for a good 9 months. Do you know how many of our local businesses are listed on there right now off the top of your head? If not, I am.
Madam Chair, I do not have that
Okay.
number on the top of my
Yeah.
head. And one of the other that this teaches or what this also touches is we have so many Westerns in our area as well, with our 7 Western sets that we have throughout Santa Fe County. And, our horse wranglers and our ranchers and the ones that supply the feed for all that. So again, it's just so many that you just don't even think about until you're actually on a set or you're part of a production and you're looking at their budgets and everything that they're budgeting, security, all of that to make a production happen. It's a lot of money that comes into our community through a film production.
Wonderful. And a lot of money that goes directly to our business owners because they're being paid to do their work.
Exactly. And I'd like to touch on too, the way our state incentive program works is designed for New Mexicans. So we're different from a lot of the other states that have incentives and a lot of the other countries that have incentives. The way it was written back in 2002, 2003, was that it was designed for New Mexicans. It was designed to create these jobs, keep these jobs here, and keep the money here. Whereas a lot of the other states, they allow productions to come in from LA, wherever they're coming from. They can bring in all their friends, everybody that they're used to working with. Well, those individuals come in, they're in those communities for a while they're doing production. But then when the production wraps, well, then that money leaves too, and those jobs leave. So how we're different from the state level is that if you want to be incentivized, you have to hire local. You have to use local crews. You have to use local vendors. You have to be on qualified production facilities, such as Midtown with Garson and with Aspect. So that gives productions another 5% uplift from the 25% that they're starting at. So we've really invested into Santa Fe in terms of working with the state film office and making sure we have these qualified production facilities to make it appealing to come into Santa Fe, because they're going to get the higher incentive by being here, by using our workforce, by using our vendors, and using our resources.
Wonderful. And I know that you've also been very active in some of the lobbying to the legislature, some ways that these incentives could be changed to even to benefit Santa Fe in a more robust manner. So I do really appreciate all the work that you've been doing to grow the film industry here in Santa Fe. And I know from economic development, and chairing EDAC, this has been a large conversation about the opportunity for film in Santa Fe, about jobs that are good, high-paying jobs for our locals, as well as our ability to diversify our economy so that we are not as subject to the whims of tourism, which we know right now is our bread and butter. And so we have in economic development, we talk about our key growth industries as a way to look at balancing our economy a little bit more, giving us a little bit more resilience when we do have any drops in tourism and when there are issues there. Director Nelson, do you have anything to add about film and economics and economic development in our community?
Madam Chair, I don't have much more to add to the great description that Director Labar Tapia provided. I do want to just hone in on that fact that small businesses are not necessarily a quote unquote film business, but those are your small mom and pop shops that are benefiting from the many diverse needs. And I think that's what is so interesting to people when you really look at what they're purchasing and what they're buying. Many businesses have an opportunity to grow and expand and get listed on Director Labar Tapia's website. We do have a contract, a partnership that just came through the governing body to support Santa Fe Community College's Trades and Certifications program. We're really excited about this because workforce was mentioned. So we have partnered up with them to promote trades and certifications, very much mindful that someone being trained in HVAC is cross-industry. It's not just residential, commercial, but we've been told by folks in the film industry, hey, that those skills apply to working on a set, et cetera. So we're really excited to have that film lens that is being added to our workforce support and workforce development with partners like SFCC, who's been so integral in the development of the film industry.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So I lost my timer. I will stop my second round here, as I know we've had quite a robust discussion, but I agree that obviously understanding the actual dollars and cents that we are receiving, and why why this is the proposal is incredibly crucial. I do also want us to think about what we lose if this project does not come to fruition in terms of both some direct costs to the city. So again, if we are the ones that are taking on the full infrastructure of these parcels, what does that look like for us? Because we do have a appraisal that is contemplating a site that we have actually done that work on, and we have not. And we have a lot of Midtown to do that work on. But also, again, when we talked about that community development plan, there was so much when all these organizations, that came together to have this discussion around what do they want from Midtown. They, of course, want the city to be financially viable, but they also, there was a lot of talk about the social impact of this property. What does this property bring in terms of entertainment and vitality to District 4, to the center of the city, to an area that really needs it? The utilization of the Midtown link and how this, I talk, aspect as an anchor for Midtown, but Midtown becomes an anchor for the link, and the link has not been utilized. And that is a big concern to me because that is an incredible project that was undertaken that has not come to fruition and that could really change the core of our city. So I am there with Councilor Chavez that I want to find a way to, yes, I understand that there is a lot of understanding that has to occur because that is our job to be able to explain this to our constituents, to be able to back up why we think this is a good decision. But I think if we, and I have said this about Midtown as a whole over and over again. This is the same tune I've been singing the entire time before we even had specifics. If we are only looking at money, we are not doing our community justice. This project is about so much more than money. And it is, of course, an aspect. We have to be able to pay for this. But I really want to make sure that we are not narrow-sighted, because at that point, we may as well just put all 64.2 acres on the auction block and sell it. With that, I will stop. And we have had some robust conversation, and so I will turn it over to the committee for a motion.
To make a motion that we lay this on the table for a date certain, which is December 4th.
I think that it would be, we're not laying on the table. Laying on the table means we're postponing, not tabling, postponing to a date certain, which would be the December 4th meeting.
I apologize. I am making a motion to postpone to a date certain, which is December 4th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Not, can I please have a roll call?
Counselor Castro?
Yes.
Counselor Chavez?
Yes.
Counselor Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. Thank you all very much for being here. Really appreciate it. Look forward to seeing you all again, and I'm sure we'll all be in touch. Moving on to our next item that was pulled. It was item J. And it is consideration of Bill 2024-16, adoption of ordinance. I don't know why we have them numbered and then don't. It is a bill related to Ethics and Campaign Review Board nominations, amending Section 6-16-16.1 of SFCC 1987 to remove the requirement that the First Judicial Bar Association submit a list of 8 nominees, from which the 4 attorney members must be appointed, and requiring that the city clerk solicit nominations for board members from at least 3 local sources. We do not have Geraldine. We have City Clerk Andrea Salazar here to present and answer questions. Councilor Michael Garcia, you pulled this item. I will send this over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No questions, Ms. Salazar. I just have an amendment that I would like to introduce. So I'm proposing to change up a little bit of how it's proposed to seek nominations for these members. And so I'm just trying to pull it up. Apologize. On page 2 of the ordinance, I'm proposing to eliminate how it's being currently proposed to nominate these folks, and I'm adding in 2 different subsections. Subsection I, attorneys, the city clerk shall seek nominations to the board from groups including but not limited to the First Judicial District Bar Association, the New Mexico Board, bar commissioners who represent the geographic area, including the city of Santa Fe, the New Mexico Hispanic Bar Association, the New Mexico Indian Bar Association, the New Mexico Black Lawyers Association, the New Mexico Women's Bar Association, and the New Mexico Lesbian Gay Lawyers Association. And then in subsection 2, for the 3 members at large, the city clerk shall seek nominations from the New Mexico Foundation for Open Government and the League of Women Voters of Santa Fe County, as well as by a public application process. Because that has changed, it changes the caption or the title. So it's proposing to eliminate that members are chosen from a list of at least 3 to a variety of local sources. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to adopt this amendment.
Second.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Nobody else does? And this might be for you, Clerk Salazar. I am curious about, well, just the process of us seeking nominations. I imagine we could reach out to these groups and say, do you have anybody to nominate? And they could just ignore us. But I know that this was a request from the Judicial District Bar Association. Have we had an opportunity to speak to any of these different associations? What is it like to actually reach out to these associations? This is not something that I have professional. And then I suppose I am asking you to put on a different hat for the moment.
Chair,
Chair, Counselor Cassett, the one lucky thing about me standing here today is I actually am a Board of Bar Commissioner for the First Judicial District Bar. I also sit on a number of these associations. So the, the one, I think, issue that hangs out there is that the associations themselves that are all individually listed don't look at their demographic based on jurisdiction. The state bar does based on their Board of Bar Commissioners and how they elect each set of Board of Bar Commissioners. So the First Judicial District, which has 3 commissioners, does know who sits and resides in that jurisdiction, whereas each of these individualized sections do not know who live in the jurisdiction. They could basically send out an email saying, we're soliciting interest for this jurisdiction, but by and large, the Board of Bar Commissioners can do that based on the jurisdiction, as well as the First Judicial District Bar Association. So I think it does kind of duplicate and cover the same jurisdictions in some ways, but you might not get a response from a number of these because they won't know if their membership lives in Santa Fe area or will have any interest in this.
Okay, but they do have, they would be basically, I mean, and they can ignore us because this is not saying, just to make sure that the city clerk shall seek nominations. The intention of this amendment is not that we must get nominations, but essentially that there is a reach out. And so if there's not a response, it is still fine. Just the fact is that they did the seeking. Okay, all right. That was my big concern, was that if they did not respond, I would not want it to hold up the process that the city clerk's office had to keep badgering these groups until we received a nomination. And then, Counselor, you say a variety of local sources. And so as I am reading this, seek nominations as follows. Do you mean that they will seek nominations from, the intention is that every single group listed here would be included every single time?
Yes. The
Yeah.
intention is to cast as wide a net as possible.
Yeah, I understand. I was just reading the language to see if how it was written, if that's how I understood it, that it was every single one of these every time. That's- Yeah, I'm completely fine with the intention. I'm just curious if the language is specific enough to state that all of these listed groups need to be solicited from. I guess I would, if the city attorney's office, if you did have that conversation, if you guys felt that was Chelsea nominations.
So if
Yeah.
I'm chair, section I, the attorneys, it's saying to reach out to these identified entities, but
Thank you.
not limited
Mhm.
to them. So the city clerk shall seek nominations to the board from groups including, but not limited to, and then it lists all the different associations. Those are specifically for the attorneys.
Section 2?
Section 2 is more focused because we do want to really focus on these 2 entities which have proven to be not only good stewards of good government, but show non-bias. And that's the intention for this board, as well as ensuring that we're also allowing for an individual who might not be on the radar of either of these 2 entities to submit an application to be considered for a position.
Okay, all right, got it. And thank you for pointing that the included but not limited to, because I was looking for that phrase in another place. I have no other questions on this. Any other questions or comments? And if not, can I get a roll call?
Counselor Castro?
Yes.
Counselor Chavez?
Yes.
Counselor Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner?
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. And now moving on to the the final ordinance as amended. Do we have any questions or comments? And if not, is there a motion? Oh, we did not get a main motion on the floor. That was my fault. It's now amended. Can I get a main motion?
Move to approve as amended.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Counselor Castro?
Yes.
Counselor Chavez?
Yes.
Counselor Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Faulkner? Madam Chair,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Madam Clerk, for sticking it out with us for that long. I apologize you had to wait, but welcome back to the city. All right. So we are now on to matters from staff. Director Nelson, any matters from you today?
Madam Chair and Councilors, I'd love to give you an update on some activity this week. We hosted our second installment of the How to Be a Family-Friendly Employer at the Children's Museum in conjunction with Family Friendly New Mexico. Had a great turnout. It was a pilot to really see the appetite and the desire for our employers to consider what that means to be a family-friendly employer. We also hosted yesterday our Business 101 in conjunction with land use. Highest attendance yet. We had about 40 people show up at the Southside Library, standing room only. This is our opportunity to share with the public navigation support on how to start a business and ask questions directly to land use. We also had both events translated and interpreted, which is a new contract that we have utilizing ARPA dollars to work with Juniper Translation Services for our community events. So that was really exciting to see that put into practice. I'd also love to take the opportunity to hopefully publicly promote our small business finance fair that is coming up on December 3rd, and that will be at the Doubletree Hotel on Cerrillos. And this is where we've got about 20 different credit unions, banks, grantors, financial organizations that are available. They'll have tables there. Small businesses can attend free of charge, shop an idea, ask questions, meet people face to face. That's 11 to 1 o'clock. And we really need help to get the word out. I think we'd love to see at least 100 people registered for that event. It's going to be fantastic. This is the second one we've done. We want to do these at least 2 times a year. Also, a reminder, on December 4th, we have our Economic Development Coffee and Collab that'll be hosted at the newly managed and operated lodge. And this is where we invite people from the community that are involved in economic development. So we really cast a big net for workforce partners, education partners, economic development folks, business supports, a chance to network and meet each other, figure out what's going on in the community, connect with us, figure out what we're doing. So this is our year-end celebration, and we'd love for you all to attend as well. So thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you. And just for the committee, while Director Randall is interim city manager, Director Nelson is going to step in for us as our staff member representing community development. She will not be here at every single meeting because she has tiny humans, and we know how important that is. But thank you so much for stepping in. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, counselors.
Director Hammond Paul.
Madam Chair, thank you. No, I'm learning the ropes on the types of updates I should be giving. I think I just got a master class in that from my colleague to my right. So commend the amazing work that's coming out of the Community Development Department. I will be sure to provide a similar type of update representing the work of Community Health and Safety for the next meeting on December 4th.
Wonderful, thank you. And honestly, there's nothing to report. That's okay too. We're good with that. Marcella, anything from you today?
Sleeping's your
Thank you. Matters from members of the committee? Counselor Castro?
I just want to make a correction. Actually, that open house at Consuelo's Place is on Saturday, November 23rd from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And residents will be giving us tours of their space. So that'll be really exciting.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other matters from the committee? I have no matters. Our next meeting will be December 4th. And with that, we are adjourned. See you all next week. We adjourned at 7:53 for the